Chapter 602. In the VIP room, the anger in Yetion's eyes gradually disappeared. Even if he wanted to kill Wei Yangzi, he couldn't do it in the black market. Mr. Nye, do you know those three? Elder Yi saw that Nye Tian had calmed down and asked with a frown. Elder Yi, have you heard of the Heaven Burial Association? Nye Tian didn't answer and transmitted his voice to Elder Yi. Although they were in the VIP room, Nye Tian was still very careful and didn't want others to hear their conversation. Those three are from the Heaven Burial Association. Elder Yi was very smart and transmitted his voice back. He couldn't hide his surprise. The Heaven Burial Association was a very mysterious organization. Rumor had it that it was even more terrifying than the Lin Xian Heaven Pavilion. Yes, Nye Tian nodded and told Elder Yi about Wei Yangzi's identity. Finally, he said, Qiu Shan's knife dragon arm was obtained from the Heaven Burial Association's Long Sky. The green-clothed elder is called Shangguan Yin, Long Sky's teacher. I met him not long ago, and he said he would definitely get the knife dragon arm for Long Sky. So that's how it is. Elder Yi nodded slightly, and his eyes flashed with sharpness. He and Qiu Shan recognized each other as grandfather and grandson. Since Shangguan Yin wanted to get the knife dragon arm from Qiu Shan, as his grandfather, of course he wouldn't agree. At this moment, a graceful figure suddenly walked out from the auction stage. It was a young woman around 20 years old. She wore a green dress that accentuated her curvaceous figure. With the appearance of this woman, the originally quiet auction room suddenly became noisy. Many people started discussing. It's Lady Ying. Why is she here? Is there something valuable to be auctioned next? Yes. Lady Lu Ying is the head auctioneer of the Shuro Auction House. It seems that the auction house has received a treasure. There's going to be a good show. I wonder what it is that is worth Lu Ying coming out personally. Nye Tian heard the discussion outside and smiled. He said, Elder Yi, it seems that the thing we want is about to appear. In the VIP room next to Nye Tian, Shangguan Yin and the others saw Lu Ying appear, and their eyes lit up. Manager Shun informed us to come over. I wonder what items are up for auction. Wei Yangzi said lightly. Shangguan Yin smiled. Since Lu Ying appeared, it must be a top item. Let's wait and see. Their eyes were burning, not because of Lu Ying, but because once she appeared, it meant that something good was about to be auctioned. However, Dragon Fifth was different. He looked at Lu Ying with a perverted look in his eyes. He was about to drool as he thought. Lu Ying is becoming more and more seductive. I have to get my hands on her someday. At this moment, Shangguan Yin glanced at Dragon Fifth with a slightly unhappy gaze. He said sternly, Dragon Fifth, don't you dare have any ideas about Lu Ying. Her father is the owner of the Azura Auction House, Azura Lu. If you offend him, even your father might not be able to protect you. Shangguan Yin knew Dragon Fifth too well. When he saw a woman, he wouldn't move. Previously at the Square Restaurant, he was defeated by Yu Qianjin with one palm because of Rui Qianyu. If Shangguan Yin wasn't there, with Yu Qianjin's dominance, Dragon Fifth would have lost a layer of skin even if he didn't die. Understand. Dragon Fifth swallowed his saliva and didn't dare to look at Lu Ying again. On the auction stage, Lu Ying smiled faintly. Her every movement was dazzling. She opened her fragrant lips and said, Everyone, we will be auctioning a medicinal ingredient. It's a grade 6 medicinal ingredient, amethyst flowing orchid. The starting price is 1 million low-grade essence crystals. Without any nonsense, Lu Ying turned and stood to the side. The black market is indeed shady. Hearing this price, Nye Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. In a normal auction house, even the best grade 6 medicinal ingredient would at most be 100,000 low-grade essence crystals. The Azura auction house was actually 10 times more than the outside. It was ridiculous. However, this was a matter of mutual consent. One was willing to fight, and the other was willing to suffer. After all, Nye Tian needed the amethyst flowing orchid. Many people at the scene didn't know what the amethyst flowing orchid was, so the scene wasn't very lively. 1 million low-grade essence crystals. Nye Tian changed his voice slightly and shouted faintly. It's someone from the VIP room. The crowd's gazes focused and looked towards the VIP room that Nie Tian was in. When Nie Tian shouted, the auction house went silent for a moment. Those who could get a VIP room in the Azura auction house were all people with extremely high statuses. Usually, when such people participated in the auction, many people would be scared away. 2 million low-grade essence crystals. At this moment, a sharp voice sounded, breaking the silence. At the same time, it had a hint of mockery and provocation. It's someone from the VIP room again. The crowd looked towards the voice. The voice came from the VIP room next door. At the same time the voice sounded, Shangguan Yin walked out from the VIP room and looked straight at Nie Tian's VIP room. A playful smile hung on his lips as he said, Nie Tian City Lord, since you're here, why hide? Are you ashamed? Huh? Nie Tian's expression turned slightly cold. He had already changed his voice intentionally, but he didn't expect the other party to recognize him. Scram! Just at this moment, a vigorous voice sounded. Immediately after, a majestic saber intent whistled out and blossomed in the air, attacking Shangguan Yin. Shangguan Yin frowned. He didn't expect the other party to suddenly attack. In a hurry, he sent out a palm strike. However, he was still a step too slow and was struck by the saber intent. His body swayed, and he took a few steps back, looking very miserable. Impudent! Shangguan Yin roared angrily. He raised his head and looked at the VIP room that Nie Tian was in. He could faintly feel an incomparably sharp saber releasing a horrifying aura inside. What a strong saber intent! The crowd's eyes narrowed and their hearts trembled. Although that surging saber intent only flashed for a moment, that majestic aura enveloped everything, making people's hearts palpitate. Without a doubt, there was a powerful saber artist hidden in that VIP room. One more step, and you will die. At this moment, the vigorous voice sounded again. At the same time, a majestic saber soul aura whistled out and turned into 2 shadows guarding the VIP room. Their auras were like mountains, arrogant and domineering. Saber's soul clone. Seeing the 2 shadows, Shangguan Yan's heart trembled. His eyes revealed an unconcealable fear. There was actually a saber artist at the Saber Soul realm in the VIP room before him. After Elder Yi absorbed the power of the Destiny Spirit Ginseng, not only did his damaged saber foundation recover, but also allowed him to make another breakthrough in his saber realm, advancing from the Saber Spirit realm to the Saber Soul realm. Saber Spirit and Saber Soul. The difference of one realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Therefore, although Elder Yi was only at the 4th tier of the Divine Wheel, his true combat ability was definitely above the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel. Shangguan Yin happened to be at the 6th tier of the Divine Wheel. In front of the Saber Soul clone, he felt a strong sense of threat. Chapter 603. When the crowd saw the 2 clones appear beside the VIP room, their hearts trembled violently. The swordsman in the VIP room was so terrifying. Shangguan Yin stood on the spot with a gloomy expression. He wanted to go forward, but he feared Elder Yi's strength. If he retreated, it would be too awkward. He couldn't go forward, but he couldn't retreat either. Manager Shun, is everyone in your Shura auction house dead? Someone is causing trouble here, and you're still pretending to be mute? With a deep roar, Shangguan Yin vented his anger on Shun Quan. It was Shun Quan who had informed them that something good was being auctioned, which was why they had appeared here. Uncle Shangguan. It wasn't Shun Quan who replied to Shangguan Yin, but a sweet voice. Lu Yingying's figure jumped up from the auction stage like a flying leaf and landed in front of Shangguan Yin. Lady Lu. When Shangguan Yin saw Lu Yingying, he became much more respectful. No matter how arrogant he was, he didn't dare to show his dissatisfaction in front of her. Uncle Shangguan, I saw what happened just now. It was you who walked out first to provoke the young master inside, and his guard was forced to act. You provoked him first, and he overreacted. Both of you are in the wrong. So, please, Uncle Shangguan, give me some face and let this matter go. How about it? Lu Yingying's voice was like the sound of nature. She was calm and indifferent, making it hard for people to reject her. Shangguan Yin was very smart and knew that she was giving him a way out. He said angrily, Since Lady Lu came out personally, I will give you some face and let this matter go. Thank you, Uncle Shangwan. Lu Yingying gave a beautiful smile that could topple nations. Shang Guanyin walked back to the VIP lounge, but Lu Yingying didn't leave. Her beautiful eyes looked in the direction where Shang Guanyin was, as if she could see him. Her delicate face smiled, and she said, "Sir inside, don't you have anything to say to me?" Nie Tian looked at the beautiful lady in front of him and coughed dryly. "Thank you, Lady Lu. You're welcome." Lu Yingying's lips gave a charming smile. She stepped lightly, and like a fairy, her figure flashed, and she returned to the auction stage. Phew! Nie Tian heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was more daunting than dangerous. This Lu Yingying was very interesting. She insisted on Nie Tian thanking her, or else she wouldn't leave. Interesting. Lu Yingying probably already knew that Nie Tian was the one who auctioned the heaven-ranked martial art, so she didn't want to offend him over a small matter. Although Elder Yu was a little impulsive earlier, this was also good. At the very least, it gave Shangguan Yin and the others a warning, letting them know that Nie Tian was protected by an expert, and they must not act blindly without thinking. Then, the auction continued. Nie Tian and Shangguan Yin took turns bidding, directly bidding the redbud flowing orchid to a sky-high price of 10 million low-grade essence crystals. These two must be in a fit of pique. A 6th-tier medicinal herb is auctioned at the price of a 7th-tier medicinal herb. This is going to be troublesome. I wonder how this is going to end. The eyes of the crowd were all focused on the 2 VIP lounges as they discussed in low voices. 20 million low-grade essence crystals. In the VIP lounge, Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He directly doubled the price. If Shangguan Yin continued to pester him, he might as well give the redbud flowing orchid to him. Nie Tian believed that the Azura auction house definitely had more than one redbud flowing orchid. Haha, Nie Tian City Lord is indeed generous. You have so many essence crystals that you have nowhere to spend them. I can't afford such an expensive medicinal herb. I'll give it to you. Shangguan Yan's cold laughter resounded from the next room. Nie Tian only smiled faintly, not minding at all. In his opinion, anything that could be resolved with essence crystals was a small matter. After successfully bidding for the redbud flowing orchid, Nie Tian finally heaved a sigh of relief. After a moment, Shun Quan appeared again. He came to the VIP lounge where Nie Tian was and smiled flatteringly. "Young master, you have already obtained the redbud flowing orchid, the heaven-ranked martial art. Take it." Nie Tian directly threw the martial art to Shun Quan. "Many thanks, young master." Shun Quan chuckled and said, "Young master, please wait for a moment. After the auction ends, the money will be sent to young master immediately." "There's no need." Nie Tian waved his hand and asked directly, "I want to know, how many redbud flowing orchid does your auction house have? What's wrong? Is one not enough?" Shin Quan was slightly stunned, and his shrewd eyes looked around. "As many as you want." Before Nie Tian could speak, a graceful figure walked in. It was Lu Yingying. "Young miss." Seeing Lu Yingying walk in, Shin Quan bowed. Nie Tian glanced at Lu Yingying and said, "How many redbud flowing orchids can a heaven-ranked martial art be exchanged for?" Of course, he knew that the Azura auction house did not want to auction a heaven-ranked martial art. A heaven-ranked martial art was something that could only be discovered and not sought. Of course, the Azura auction house wanted to buy it. However, due to the rules of the auction house, they could only go through the motions. However, in the end, it was very likely that the Azura auction house would obtain the heaven-ranked martial art. Shin Quan called Shangguan Yin and the others over just to show them the excitement, to show them that the Azura auction house had good things and to frequent it in the future. Nie Tian saw that Lu Yingying was a pretty good person and had helped him out earlier. Hence, he wanted to return the favor by using a heaven-ranked martial art to exchange for the redbud flowing orchids, eliminating the formality of the auction. Lu Yingying was very smart and naturally understood Nie Tian's intentions. She smiled and asked, "Young master, how many redbud flowing orchids do you think a heaven-ranked martial art can be exchanged for?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Let's go with the red bud flowing orchids according to the earlier auction price. 20 million inferior grade essence crystals per stock. In your auction house, a heaven-ranked martial art can be sold for at least 10 million peak grade essence crystals. With that, I can exchange one heaven-ranked martial art for 500 stalks of red bud flowing orchids. This is not too much, right? A heaven-ranked martial technique was enough for a large clan or faction to go bankrupt. In an ordinary auction house, a heaven-ranked martial art could be sold for at least 1 million peak grade essence crystals. In the Azura auction house, this price would be 10 times higher. Furthermore, this was the most conservative price. 500 stalks of red bud flowing orchids. When Shin Quan heard this number, his mouth gaped so wide that one could swallow an egg. Very reasonable. Lu Yingying did not react much. She smiled calmly and said, "Our auction house does not have that many red bud flowing orchids right now. We will need some time to collect them." The price Nietian gave for the heaven-ranked martial art was very reasonable. It was within Lu Yingying's acceptable range. Furthermore, if the heaven-ranked martial art went through the normal auction process, who knew what kind of price it would fetch? "How many do you have?" Nietian asked with a frown. "About 100 stalks." Lu Yingying thought for a while, but did not give an exact number. "Very well. I will take 100 stalks first, even if it is 200 peak grade essence crystals. As for the remaining money, I want other herbs." "Is that possible?" Nietian suddenly thought of something, and the corner of his lips curled up strangely. "What herbs do you want?" Lu Yingying had already guessed that Nietian was an alchemist. She was worried that the auction house did not have what he wanted, so she asked, "Demonic God Flower." Nietian smiled faintly and said a name. Chapter 604. As expected, Nietian saw Lu Yingying's reaction and his heart shook. He was sure that his guess was right. Ruoyu must have bought the flower from the black market at the Shuro auction house. Lu Yingying realized that she had overreacted and the shock on her face disappeared. She smiled and asked, "What's your name, mister?" Even now, she still didn't know Nietian's name. "Nietan," Nietian replied calmly. "Mr. Nye." Lu Yingying's gentle lips curled into an enchanting smile. "How do you know the Shuro auction house has the flower?" She was a smart woman and knew that Nietian had seen through it, so she didn't hide it. "I heard it from a friend," Nietian answered vaguely. Lu Yingying nodded and didn't ask anymore, but her tone was hesitant. "The flower isn't an ordinary herb. I can't make the decision. I have to ask my father." "I see." Nietian's face stiffened. "I don't have much time, so we have to do this quickly." "No problem. Please follow me." Lu Yingying smiled confidently and left. Nietian and Elder Yi looked at each other and left with Lu Yingying. Demon God Flower, a rank 8 herb, contained the most violent spirit energy of heaven and earth. It wasn't just Nietian who needed to increase his strength. Elder Yi, Qiu Shan, Jean DeBeo, and the others also needed to increase their strength. If they could obtain more demonic god flowers, their strength would increase explosively. Especially Qiu Shan. If he could get a flower, he would be able to open the 3rd dragon mark in the arm of the Blade Dragon. The auction continued, but there weren't any important items. Shang Guanyin and the others came for nothing. "It really is Nietian." Seeing Nietian leave with Lu Yingying, Wei Yangzi's eyes flashed with killing intent, and his voice was cold. "He's the one who killed 7th brother?" Dragon 5th looked at Nietian and gritted his teeth. Dragon Sky had another name, Dragon 7. He was Dragon 5th's 7th brother. "Brother Shang Guanyin, what do we do?" Sensing Nietian's strength, Wei Yangzi's heart was filled with astonishment, and his eyes were filled with deep fear. A year ago at the Dragon Blood Martial Gathering, Nietian was only rank 1 giant spirit. Now he was rank 6 truth essence. His strength increasing speed was heaven-defying. If he was given a few more years, he would definitely be on par with the pinnacle of the small worlds. If he was given a few more years, he would definitely be able to stand against the pinnacle. Shang Guanyan's face was grim, and his eyes flickered with cold, killing intent as he said in a cold voice, "Since he came to the black market, then he can forget about leaving alive. Big brother Shangguan, this is the Azure auction house. Furthermore, the strength of the bladesman beside that brat is terrifying. It would not be good for us to make a move, Wei Yangzi said somewhat worriedly. He had just seen with his own eyes that Shangwan Yin was forced back by old Ye's saber strike. Furthermore, those two saber soul clones were even more shocking. Even if Shangwan Yin fought with all his might, he would not be a match for old Yi. Even Shangwan Yin was no match for him, so Wei Yangzi was even weaker. When Wei Yangzi mentioned Elder Yi, Shangwan Yan's complexion alternated between green and red. He felt a stifled feeling in his chest that he was unable to expel. His eyes revealed a trace of coldness as he squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. Third young master, please make your move. Third young master. Third brother. Hearing Shangwan Yin mention the third young master, Wei Yangzi and Dragon Fifth exclaimed in surprise at the same time, and terror actually appeared on their faces. This third young master seemed to be a very terrifying person. Even Wei Yangzi and Dragon Fifth felt fear. Lu Yingying led Nye Tian and Elder Yi to a room in the inner hall and said, "Mr. Nye, please wait a moment." She then turned around and left. A moment later, Shen Quan appeared and brought Nye Tian and Yi Chun to another room. In the room, a middle-aged man sat upright with his eyes closed. This person's face was resolute and dignified without being angry. Even though he was sitting there, he was like a mountain, giving off a majestic and vast feeling. Lu Yingying stood behind the man and was very respectful. "Master, young Master Nye is here," Shen Quan shouted from outside the door. "Invite young Master Nye in," Lu Yingying replied. Nye Tian pushed the door open and entered. The middle-aged man's eyes were still closed, as if he didn't notice their arrival at all. Nye Tian glanced at Lu Yingying. The latter had a smile on her lips, but didn't say anything. "Nye Tian, City Lord, you heard about the monster godflower from Ruoyu, right?" Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes. A trace of sharpness flashed across his eyes, and it was replaced by kindness and calmness. "You know me?" Nye Tian's gaze froze, unable to hide his surprise. The middle-aged man smiled faintly and said, "Nye Tian, City Lord, is in the limelight. At such a young age, you became the red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Guild. Even though I'm in the black market, your name still resounds like thunder in my ears. Seeing you today, you're indeed extraordinary. How should I address you?" Nye Tian's expression calmed down. He knew that the person in front of him was an important person. His tone was cautious. It was obvious that this person was very smart and knew a lot about what was happening outside. He even guessed that Nye Tian learned about the monster godflower from Ruoyu. "Lu Jinghong." Lu Jinghong nodded and smiled. These three simple words made Lu Yingying's eyes tremble. This was the first time she saw her father introduce his name in front of someone. It seemed like Lu Jinghong valued Nye Tian a lot. "Mr. Lu," Nye Tian spoke calmly, "since Mr. Lu is willing to see me, I'm sure you're willing to exchange the monster godflower for a heaven-class martial technique. I wonder how many monster godflowers I can get." "Nye Tian, City Lord, you brought a heaven-class scroll with you. Aren't you afraid that I'll take it away?" Lu Jinghong didn't answer Nye Tian's question. "You won't." Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "If I get robbed in the Azura auction house, who would dare to come to the auction house to auction things in the future? Mr. Lu is a smart person. You won't do something stupid. It seems like Nye Tian, City Lord, is smarter than me." Lu Jinghong smiled brightly and asked, "How many monster godflowers does Nye Tian, City Lord, want?" "4," Nye Tian answered after thinking for a while. He originally wanted 500 redbud flowing orchids. Now he only wanted 100. The remaining 400 for 4 monster godflowers was not too much. Very reasonable. Lu Jinghong nodded slightly and said, "Nye Tian, City Lord, do you know why my auction house is called the Azura Auction House?" Nye Tian was stunned and shook his head. Lu Jinghong smiled strangely and said, "Because only the people on the Azura ranking can buy the important items." "What do you mean?" Nye Tian, City Lord, was stunned. "The meaning is clear. If Nye Tian, City Lord wants to take away the monster godflowers, he has to be on the Azura ranking first." Lu Jinghong's face sank, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 605. Nie Tian saw the panic in Lu Yingying's eyes and guessed that the Azura list was likely an internal strength ranking of the Azura auction house. It would be very difficult to get on the Azura list. Okay. Without hesitation, Nie Tian said, Mr. Lu, please tell me how I can get on the Azura list. Lu Yingying saw that Nie Tian was really going to agree. Her eyes narrowed and revealed a trace of worry. Follow me. Lu Jinghong smiled faintly and walked out of the room. The Azura auction house was not only the largest auction house in the black market, but was also the largest arena in the black market. The Azura arena was the arena set up by the Azura auction house. There is a saying in the black market, once you enter the Azura list, your life or death is up to the heavens. The Azura arena not only determined victory and defeat, but also life and death. The Azura arena had the heaven, earth, profound, and yellow Azura lists. Martial artists that could enter the lists were all extremely talented. The yellow Azura list recorded martial artists under the age of 30. The profound list recorded martial artists under the age of 50. The earth list recorded martial artists under the age of 100. And the heaven list recorded martial artists over the age of 100. Under Lu Jinghong's lead, Nie Tian and Elder Yi quickly arrived at the Azura arena. Inside the arena, there was a sea of people. Nie Tian, City Lord, between you and this old man, who will be on the Azura list. Lu Jinghong looked strangely at Nie Tian and Elder Yi. On the way here, Nie Tian already understood the rules of the Azura list. If he came to the Azura list, he would have to challenge martial artists on the yellow Azura list. If Elder Yi came to the Azura list, he would have to challenge martial artists on the heaven list. I'll do it. Before Lu Jinghong could finish his sentence, Old Man Yi took a step forward and unleashed a terrifying saber intent. Lu Jinghong's eyes trembled. Elder Yi. However, Nie Tian's voice rang out with a faint smile. The person who needs a demonic god flower is me. Of course, I'll be the one on the slaughter rankings. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Elder Yi. Elder Yi, you can't reveal your strength. I'll handle the Azura list. Elder Ye's eyes narrowed. He immediately understood Nie Tian's meaning and stopped arguing. All right, Lu Jinghong laughed and said, according to the rules of the Azura fighting field, the Nie Tian City Lord wants to kill the Azura Huang ranking. As long as the Nie Tian City Lord can fight his way into the top 10 of the yellow roll, he can take away the demon god flower, and I will also give the Nie Tian City Lord one for free. What do you think? Top 10 of the Huang ranking? Lu Yingying's eyes trembled, and she immediately said, Father, I'm only at the 9th level of the truth element, and I'm only ranked 15th on the Huang ranking. The Nie Tian City Lord is only at the 6th level of the truth element, so how could he make it into the top 10? Lu Yingying felt that Lu Jinghong was bullying Nie Tian too much. It seems that Mr. Lu had a lot of confidence in me. I can't disappoint Mr. Lu, so it's settled. Nie Tian looked at Lu Yingying and expressed his gratitude, and at the same time agreed. You. Lu Yingying's delicate face stiffened. Her body trembled, and her chest trembled. She blamed Nie Tian for not knowing what was good for him. Sure, young people have pride. Very good. With a hearty laugh, Lu Jinghong led Nie Tian to the yellow-ranking Azura field. Pointing at a golden list, he said, City Lord Nie Tian, the 3rd, 9th, and 10th places on the yellow ranking are all here. Who do you want to challenge? Nie Tian walked over and glanced at the list. To his surprise, he saw a familiar name. True Cass Rain, ranked 4th. Ruozhen Su was on the Huang ranking, and he was ranked 4th. However, Nie Tian felt that with his strength, he could at least be in the top 3. It was probably because the top 3 weren't here, so he didn't give Ruozhen Su a chance to challenge him. Long San. Nie Tian noticed that the first place on the Huang ranking was someone called Long San. Thinking of Dragon 5th's name, he could basically guess that this person was Dragon 5th's elder brother. Nie Tian City Lord, have you decided who you want to challenge? Lu Jinghong smiled faintly. At that moment, Nie Tian noticed another name. He laughed and said, Lu Mingxian, who's ranked 6th. Lu Mingxian. The word Lu attracted Nie Tian's attention. Are you crazy? My elder brother is a spirit wheel level 1 warrior. Lu Yingying screamed as soon as Nie Tian finished his sentence. It seemed that Nie Tian knew that Lu Mingxian was related to him, so he deliberately chose Lu Mingxian. However, Nie Tian dared to challenge the top 3. This courage was admirable. Of course, Nie Tian had the confidence to challenge the top 3. The Azura Huang ranking was only for warriors below the age of 30. Those who could reach the spirit wheel level before the age of 30 were definitely geniuses. Nie Tian didn't believe that there were so many geniuses in a small black market. Therefore, he concluded that even the top 3 of the Huang ranking were only at the spirit wheel level 1. Indeed, as he expected, Lu Mingxian was at the spirit wheel level 1. What? A piece of trash at level 6 enlightenment element dares to challenge me? At this moment, an extremely unfriendly voice was heard. On the high platform, a young man in yellow took a step forward and appeared directly in front of Nie Tian. His expression was full of contempt. He glanced at Nie Tian and didn't have a desire to look at him a second time. Without a doubt, this young man was the 3rd place on the Azura Huang ranking, Lu Mingxian. At the same time, he was Lu Yingying's elder brother and Lu Jinghong's son. Nie Tian sized up Lu Mingxian. He had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. He was handsome and exuded a strong aura of arrogance. Why? Is Mr. Lu's son not allowed to challenge me? Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and smiled coldly. Lu Jinghong's eyes narrowed. He felt strange. Nie Tian was so confident. Did he really have the ability to defeat a warrior at the spirit wheel level? Of course. Lu Jinghong smiled faintly and said to Lu Mingxian, Mingxian, since Nie Tian City Lord wants to challenge you, you can't refuse. Just remember, Nie Tian City Lord is a guest. Don't hurt him. Umph. Lu Mingxian glanced at Nie Tian and sneered. He said mockingly, a little loach wants to fight a dragon. I can only guarantee that he won't die. With that, Lu Mingxian took a step forward and flew directly to the Azura stage in the distance. My son is a little arrogant. Please don't mind him, Nie Tian City Lord. Lu Jinghong smiled faintly. His words were polite, but his eyes revealed his love for Lu Mingxian. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and said in a serious tone, Mr. Lu, forgive me for speaking bluntly. Your son is talented, but he is too impetuous. If he doesn't change his nature, it will be difficult for him to achieve great things. Lu Jinghong's eyes narrowed and his face darkened. With Nie Tian's age and strength, it was inevitable that people would feel uncomfortable when he said such words to teach someone a lesson. Although he knew that Nie Tian was speaking the truth, Lu Jinghong was still very angry. Chapter 606. Lu Mingxuan's appearance on the Azura stage immediately attracted countless gazes. Young Master Lu Mingxian, a peerless genius who became a divine wheel expert at the age of 21. There's actually someone who wants to challenge him. Isn't that courting death? Look at that person. He doesn't seem to be even 20 years old, but he's already at the 6th level of true element. Not bad. Too young. Even if he's at the 9th level of true element, it's impossible for him to take a single move from young Master Lu. The crowd began to discuss. They all believed that Nie Tian would definitely lose. It was no wonder that Lu Mingxian was extremely famous in the Azura battle arena. Not only was he Lu Jinghong's son, but his strength and talent were indeed strong. Nie Tian, I want to see if you really have the strength to challenge my son. Lu Jinghong stared sharply at Nie Tian, but he was inexplicably worried in his heart. On the contrary, Elder Yi, who was standing beside him, had an indifferent expression. There was even a faint smile on his face. It was obvious that he was very confident in Nie Tian. Lu Mingxian stood on the Azura stage and swept his gaze across the audience. He couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. He liked the feeling of being the center of attention. It made him feel very satisfied to be looked up to by people. Young Master Lu, are you done enjoying yourself? Let's begin. Nie Tian sneered and said in a mocking tone. Lu Mingxuan's expression stiffened. He turned to look at Nie Tian and said cold, Brat, you've got guts. I just don't know if your life is big enough. As the cold voice fell, Lu Mingxuan's entire body released a chill. A wave of killing intent was revealed. Lu Mingxian originally didn't want to kill Nie Tian, but the latter didn't know what was good for him. He actually dared to mock him. This was intolerable. Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with Lu Mingxian. The absolute heaven-slash sword appeared in his hand. Endless sword intent surged from his body, and he said, "After the battle, you will naturally know if my life is big enough." Sword intent. Sensing the sword intent on Nie Tian's body, Lu Mingxuan's eyes narrowed. He then smiled and said, "You're actually a swordsman. Let's see whose sword is stronger." As the sound of his voice faded, the aura around Lu Mingxuan's body skyrocketed, and an enormous sword intent surged out from his body. He was also a swordsman. Interesting. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as a playful smile appeared on his face. Ghost Star Sword Art. Broken Star swallows the sun. With a loud roar, Lu Mingxuan's silhouette moved. A terrifying sword intent burst forth, and the entire Azura arena was filled with a blinding sword light. Nie Tian smiled faintly and stabbed out with his sword. A gigantic sword image condensed, giving off a majestic aura as it clashed head-on with Lu Mingxian. Boom! A dull sound of collision rang out on the Azura arena, and the two figures retreated at the same time. Everyone felt the astonishing sword while spreading out, and their hearts trembled violently. The two of them were actually equally matched. How is this possible? This scene caused everyone's eyes to freeze as they exclaimed in shock. Not only did Nie Tian receive Lu Mingxuan's attack, but he was also equally matched. Lu Jinghong furrowed his brows. In that attack, just now, Nie Tian's strength was obviously below Lu Mingxuan's, but he was still able to fight to a draw. It was truly unimaginable. Moreover, Nie Tian's sword was extremely terrifying, and it seemed to completely suppress Lu Mingxuan's sword will. The proud sword will and the astral soul sword will were fused together, and it was enough to suppress any swordsman. Even an ordinary sword for swordsmen would be restrained. Lu Yingying, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. Her petite mouth was agape, but no sound came out. Only Elder Yi was as calm as usual. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he murmured. Mr. Nie didn't even use his full strength, yet he was able to suppress his opponent. His sword will is truly terrifying. Elder Yi was a saber user at the Saber Soul Realm. Sabers and swords were different paths that led to the same goal, so he could naturally tell that Nie Tian had held back a lot in that attack, just now. Otherwise, Lu Mingxian would have already been blasted off the stage. Lu Mingxuan's first attack ended in a draw with Nie Tian, but his expression became extremely gloomy. He was filled with hostility, and a lump of anger accumulated in his chest, causing his expression to become even more ferocious. Nie Tian's expression was calm, and he said indifferently, "Your sword will is very strong, but your sword chi is impetuous, and your sword heart is unstable. If this continues, you will eventually become a mediocre person on the path of the sword." His tone was calm and cold, but in Lu Mingxuan's ears, it was like a resounding slap, incomparably ear-piercing. He was a genius that was the focus of everyone's attention, and since he was young, he had always heard praise. How could he tolerate even the slightest bit of criticism, especially when this criticism came from a cultivator of the same age as him? Who do you think you are? What right do you have to lecture me? Lu Mingxian flew into a rage and attacked again. The sword intent became even more austere, but its power was weaker than before. For a swordsman, no matter how strong their sword intent was, if they did not have the support of a pure sword heart, they would definitely not be able to unleash their power. Lu Mingxuan's sword heart was already in chaos, so the power of his sword intent was naturally greatly reduced. "Sigh, for Lu Jinghong's sake, I'll give you another chance." Nie Tian shook his head slightly and sighed. Following that, the sword chi in his body erupted like a volcano. Immediately, the boundless sword intent was like a mountain or a sea, enveloping the surrounding space within a few hundred meters. The tyrannical sword intent was released, and it actually directly swallowed Lu Mingxuan's sword intent, causing him to be unable to feel even the slightest bit of his own sword intent. Lu Mingxian was in the midst of the boundless sword intent, and he felt as if all the sword intent in his body had been stripped away. The ghost star sword in his hand seemed to have turned into useless scrap metal. A true swordsman has unswerving sword chi and a pure sword heart. If you can't even achieve these 2 points, then you're not worthy of being called a swordsman. Nie Tian's vast and cold voice sounded out. It was like a clap of thunder, bombarding Lu Mingxuan's ears. At this moment, Lu Mingxuan's expression was sluggish. He felt that the surrounding sword intent seemed to contain the supreme, true meaning of the sword Tao. His heart suddenly calmed down, as if everything around him had disappeared, and the only thing left in the world was the most extreme sword intent. What's wrong with young Master Lu? When the crowd saw the scene on the Azura stage, they were all stunned, not knowing what had happened. Mingxian, Lu Jinghong, sensed that something was wrong. He was stunned at first, but then he chuckled. Father, what's wrong with Big Brother? Lu Yingying couldn't understand what was going on and asked nervously. Great opportunity, great opportunity. Lu Jinghong chuckled, as if he had gone silly. What a terrifying comprehension of the sword Tao. Elder Yi also understood something, and a look of worship appeared in his eyes. On the Azura stage, Nie Tian felt that the time was right. His body trembled, and the sword intent instantly disappeared. Lu Mingxian, what did you comprehend? Nie Tian looked at Lu Mingxian and smiled faintly. Thank you for your teachings, mister. Lu Mingxian was shocked, and the aura of his body completely changed. It was as if he had become a different person. He actually knelt on both knees and bowed deeply to Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded slightly, expressing his satisfaction. This was the first time he had fused his comprehension of the sword Tao into his sword intent and revealed it to the world. If Lu Mingxian didn't comprehend anything at all, Nie Tian would really vomit blood. Lu Jinghong was right. This was Lu Mingxuan's great opportunity. Chapter 607. Below the Azura stage, everyone's expressions froze when they saw Lu Mingxian suddenly kneel with a respectful tone. The crowd was dead silent. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Lu Mingxian, do you still want to continue this duel? Lu Mingxian slowly stood up and bowed. Mr. Swordsmanship is 1,000,000 times better than mine. I, Lu Mingxian, am convinced. I admit defeat. Admit defeat. The 2 simple words were like a boulder falling into a calm lake, causing a huge uproar. Young Master Lu admitted defeat. The crowd's eyes trembled violently, as if they couldn't believe their ears. Lu Mingxian, who was ranked 3rd on the Azura yellow list, actually admitted defeat. Did the sun rise from the north today? The crowd was in an uproar for a long time before it calmed down. Nie Tian took a step forward and returned to Lu Jinghong's side in a flash. Lu Mingxian also returned and stood respectfully at the side. The hostility in his eyes was replaced by determination. Big brother, you... Lu Yingying still didn't know what happened. She looked at Lu Mingxian in a daze, but the latter smiled without saying anything. Nie Tian won with ease. He looked at Lu Jinghong and said with a faint smile, Mr. Lu, can I take the demon godflower now? Yes, of course. Lu Jinghong stepped forward and couldn't hide his excitement. Nie Tian City Lord, please wait in the inner hall. I'll get someone to prepare it for you. A moment later, Nie Tian and Elder Yi appeared in the inner hall. Lu Jinghong sent someone to prepare 100 redbud flowing orchids and 5 devil god flowers and place them in front of Nie Tian. Of the 5 devil god flowers, 4 were exchanged for a heaven-tier martial technique, and 1 was a gift from Lu Jinghong. Nie Tian checked the herbs and put them away after finding nothing wrong with them. With these herbs, not only could he suppress the 5 poison blood infants' 5 poison chi, but he could also help the people around him improve their strength. The devil god flower's medicinal power was very strong. Even a spirit wheel expert would increase their strength by at least 2 levels. Nie Tian passed the heaven-tier martial technique to Lu Jinghong, but didn't leave immediately. He asked, Mr. Lu, I just saw the first on the Azura yellow list, Long San. Who is he? Nietion guessed that Long San and Dragon Fifth were related, so he wanted to find out more about this person. Lu Jinghong's expression grew cautious as he said, "City Lord Nietion, you'd better not ask about him. He's a lunatic from the Long clan. Few people in the black market would dare to provoke him." The Long clan? Nietion narrowed his eyes and asked, "Is the Long clan very powerful in the black market?" Even Lu Jinghong was afraid of him. It seemed the power behind Long San was extraordinary. Perhaps the heaven. Lu Tian City Jinghong was a San. "City Lord Nietion, you'd better not ask about it. Don't make things difficult for me." Lu Jinghong seemed somewhat nervous, as if he was trying to hide something from Nietion. "Nietion, City Lord, don't ask. Don't make things difficult for me." Lu Jinghong was slightly nervous. "Father, Shangwan Yin and the others have left. They just had a conflict with Nietion. Will they attack them in the black market?" Lu Ying asked worriedly. "Father, Shangwan Yin and the others have also left. Just now, they had a conflict with Nietion. Will they make a move on them in the black market?" Lu Ying's pretty face turned slightly cold as she worriedly said, "Big brother said he comprehended something and went in a closed-door cultivation," Lu Ying replied. "Brother said he comprehended something and went in a closed-door cultivation," Lu Ying replied. "Looks like he did gain something from the battle with Nietion. Fine, I'll help Nietion this time. Consider it returning a favor." Lu Jinghong smirked and shouted into the void, "Lu Qian, go out and make sure those two leave the black market safely." "Yes," a reply came from the void, and a weak aura that was almost undetectable flashed past. Sensing that figure disappear, Lu Ying immediately became nervous and said, "Father, could it be that Shangguan Yin will really make a move against Nietion and the others?" "He will." Lu Jinghong smiled helplessly. "Shangguan Yin is a narrow-minded person. He will definitely take revenge. That Bladesman embarrassed him in front of everyone. He will definitely take revenge." Lu Ying nodded slightly in agreement. She then said, "The Bladesman by Nietion's side is very strong. Shangguan Yin might not be his match. Even if he wanted to take revenge, he might not have the guts." Lu Jinghong smiled and said, "Even you can tell that Shangguan Yin is not the Bladesman's match. How could Shangguan Yin not know?" "Father, are you saying that Shangguan Yin will ask for help?" Lu Ying immediately understood. Her eyes flickered and she asked, "Who will he ask for help?" Lu Jinghong pondered for a moment and said, "If I'm not wrong, Shangguan Yin will ask the Long family's madman to help." "Long San." Lu Ying's pupils constricted. Her expression stiffened and slowly turned into fear. Nietion walked out of the auction house and immediately sensed several figures following behind him. However, his expression was calm, as if he didn't know anything. A trace of coldness appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Elder Yi, there's a tail behind us." Nietion calmly transmitted to Elder Yi, reminding him to be careful. Elder Yi nodded. He didn't show any reaction on the surface, but he was already on guard. Nietion and Elder Yi unhurriedly walked towards the exit of the black market. When they were about to reach the exit, Nietion couldn't help but quicken his steps. "Nietion, City Lord, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Since you've come, you should at least leave something behind before you leave." Shangguan Yan's voice rang out. His deep voice contained a trace of ridicule. "Oh!" Nietion's footsteps stopped, and he suddenly turned around. He indifferently said, "What do you want me to leave behind?" "Leave your life behind." Another voice sounded out, and it carried piercingly cold, killing intent. It was precisely Wei Yangzi. Wei Yangzi. Seeing this person again, Nietion's gaze trembled. His entire body surged with ice-cold, killing intent. It was this person who had killed Old Li and had almost killed Nietion. "Nietion, City Lord, we meet again." Wei Yangzi's gaze was sinister, and his entire body emitted a trace of coldness. In Heaven Luo City, Wei Yangzi hadn't been able to kill Nietion. Since the latter had come to the black market, he shouldn't even think about leaving alive. "Humph." Nietion smiled sinisterly and said, "It seems that this trip to the black market wasn't in vain. At least I know that the famous Heaven Burial Guild is hiding in the black market." Hearing Nie Tian's words, Shangguan Yin and Wei Yangzi's gazes trembled at the same time. They revealed a panicked expression. When Nie Tian saw their reactions, he knew that he had guessed correctly. The Heaven Burial Guild's base was in the spiritual city's black market. Knowing this is enough for you to die. At this moment, a low voice rang out in the air. It was so cold that it pierced right into the bones. The surrounding space seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. Instantly, a cold aura gushed forth, causing the entire space to be frozen. Chapter 608. The figure in the air flew across the sky. With every step he took, the cold aura in the air became thicker. By the time he landed, a thick layer of frost had formed on the ground, extending for hundreds of meters. Third young master, third brother, Shangguan Yin, Huayangzi, and Dragon the Fifth looked at the newcomer with burning eyes and exclaimed in unison. Long San. Hearing how Shangguan Yin and the others addressed him, Nie Tian immediately realized that this person was Long San, the first on the Azura yellow ranking. Long San was dressed in white. His figure was tall and straight, and his aura was low. His whole body emanated a cold aura. Standing there, he was like an iceberg, giving people great pressure. Cultivation of the fourth tier of the divine wheel. Nie Tian looked at Long San and used his divine sense to sense him. He could not help but stare. The latter looked to be about 25 or 26 years old, but he was actually at the fourth tier of the divine wheel. His talent in martial arts was astonishing. Nie Tian estimated that even Mou, Gu Qiulong, and the others were not as terrifying as Long San. More importantly, Long San's aura was like ice. Obviously, he was an ice attribute origin spirit. Looking at his aura, his origin spirit was very terrifying. He should be a type of spirit. Shangguan Yin, is he the one who killed seventh brother? Long San looked at Nie Tian, and an icy aura spread out like a tentacle. It was extremely fast and directly attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes focused. Immediately, his body shook and a sword will gushed out. The brilliance of the sword bloomed in the air. Boom! The sound of glass shattering was heard, and countless ice shards appeared in the air. Long San directly called out Shangguan Yan's name and attacked Nie Tian without hesitation. It was enough to show how overbearing this person was. Yes, his name is Nie Tian. Seventh brother was killed by him, Shangguan Yin shouted, pointing at Nie Tian with a look of hatred. The corners of Long San's mouth twitched. He took a step forward, and the chill in the air suddenly intensified. White frost floated in the air. His eyes flickered with a cold light, and he breathed in and out an icy aura. He said, "You're not bad. That move just now was just a test, but it still required the strength of a Tier 1 divine will to withstand it. You're only at the 6th true element stage, yet you were able to block my attack. Dragon Sky dying at your hands is not an injustice." Long San's indifferent voice didn't contain any emotion. Not only was Long San's expression ice cold, his heart was also ice cold. "You want to avenge Dragon Sky?" Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and a spiritual pill appeared in his hand. It was a 6th grade Yuan burst pill, and he was ready to consume it at any time. Long San was very powerful. Even Elder Yi might not be his opponent. If he wanted to kill, Nie Tian would have to fight with all his might. Dragon Sky died at your hands. That was his fate. Long San spoke indifferently. Then his eyes turned cold, and he continued, "And you died at my hands. That was your fate." His indifferent voice was extremely domineering, as if the god of death was pronouncing judgment. Long San was indeed domineering, but he had the ability to do so. Although he only had the strength of a Tier 4 divine wheel, his combat ability was enough to make a Tier 7 divine wheel martial artist bow down. "I'm sorry, I don't believe in fate. I only believe in myself." Nie Tian smiled calmly. He already knew that this bitter battle was unavoidable. Without hesitation, he placed the Yuan burst pill in his mouth and swallowed it immediately. You want to use the Yuan burst pill to increase your strength. Long Sin could tell what Nie Tian was doing, but he only smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain, and he said mockingly Ridiculous. Young Master Long San. This person is a guest of our auction house. You can't kill him. At this moment, a deep voice rang out from the sky, following which a vast amount of energy gushed forth, covering the entire sky and earth as it descended. Lu Qian, you're meddling too much. Almost at the same time, another voice rang out. Then, the space around them trembled, and a terrifying giant hand appeared, firmly blocking the mighty force from before. The two forces collided in the void and dissipated into nothingness. Long Chincho, the low voice from before sounded, revealing extreme surprise. Lu Qian, let's go. If you want to play, I'll play with you. Long Chincho's voice sounded. Then, the two powerful auras disappeared in an instant. The void returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Yet Tian frowned slightly. He already understood what was going on. The person called Lu Qian must have been sent by Lu Jinghong to protect him in secret. However, he did not expect that a cultivator from the Long clan would also appear and directly hold Lu Qian back. Previously, Tian had already vaguely learned from Lu Jinghong that the Long clan should be the top power in the black market. Even though he knew this, Lu Jinghong still wanted to protect Tian. It was obvious that he wanted to return the favor and thank Tian for enlightening Lu Mingxian. Unfortunately, this favor had been returned in vain. I didn't expect that Lu Jinghong would risk offending the Long clan to save you. It seems like your relationship with the Lu clan is not simple. Long San coldly smiled and said, since it's like this, there's no need to keep you alive. If you want to kill him, you'll have to pass through me first. At this moment, Old Man Yi stood up and took a step forward. His entire body was unleashed with saber intent, making him look like a sharp saber. You think you can stop me? Long Sen roared in a low voice. Suddenly, frost and snow fell from the sky. His silhouette flickered in the sky, and with every step he took, a terrifying icicle would appear on the ground. Arrogant, Elder Yi roared. The reverse serene blade appeared and slashed down. Immediately, an endless amount of ice rose from the ground and turned into mist under the blade intent. The endless blade intent condensed together, and a huge blade shadow appeared, slashing towards Long San. Long San's silhouette flickered in the sky. The icicle turned into an ice wall, and the coldness in the air suddenly intensified. The surrounding space of several hundred meters directly turned into an ice cellar. Kaboom! The blade and the ice collided. Tens of thousands of ice blades bloomed in the air and fell one after another. The coldness in the air became even more intense. Elder Ye's body swayed. He felt a bone-piercing coldness penetrating his chest. Immediately, his limbs and meridians were about to freeze. In the next moment, a layer of faint ice crystals actually formed on the outside of his body. One move, just one move. Unexpectedly, the blade intent that filled the sky was frozen. Even Elder Yi himself was frozen. Long San's terror made people's hair stand on end. Elder Yi, Tian saw that the situation was bad. He took a step forward and slammed his palm on Elder Ye's body. Endless astral energy flowed into Elder Ye's body, forcefully forcing out the coldness. PFFF. Elder Ye's body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. When the blood fell on the ground, it directly turned into red ice shards. I'm fine. Elder Yi waved his hand, and his expression eased up. Elder Yi, I'll leave the others to you. Leave this guy to me. Tian nodded slightly and took another step forward. His entire body's aura erupted like the mountains and the seas. Waves of astral energy gushed out majestically. It was as if an invisible giant hand was pushing forward. Crackling sounds could be heard in the air. The frozen space collapsed piece by piece. After taking the 6th-tier burst Yuan elixir, Tian's strength skyrocketed to the 1st tier of the Divine Wheel. Chapter 609. Tian's aura skyrocketed, and the power of the stars surged like a tide. Crack, crack, crack. In the void, there was a clear cracking sound. Countless pieces of ice and frost fell, and the frozen space was broken. What a strong aura. Shangguan Yin and the others saw this scene and felt the terrifying power in the surrounding space. Their eyes trembled violently. Tian could actually shatter the frozen space. Such strength was too strong. He had only taken an explosive yuan elixir, and his strength was only at the first tier of the divine wheel. Yet, he could exert such terrifying power. It was shocking. Very well, you're the first person to break through my frozen will. I want to see how strong you can be with a 6th-tier explosive yuan elixir. Long San raised his eyebrows and said coldly. His tone was extremely domineering. It is enough to kill you. Tianling replied coldly. The boundary zone formation in his body rumbled and activated, and the power of the stars from the raw star stone gushed out continuously. He had reached the divine wheel realm by relying on the power of the explosive yuan elixir. This state couldn't be maintained for long, so he had to end the battle as soon as possible. As soon as he finished speaking, Tian's figure moved, and he stepped in a strange manner. It seemed like he was taking steps, but his speed was extremely fast. He even left an afterimage in the air. The ice on the ground was shattered. With every step Tian took, the sword will in the space became more intense. In just the blink of an eye, the sword will was extremely sharp. The brilliance of the sword flowed in the air, and it was extremely invasive. The ice on the ground was melting bit by bit. Interesting. Facing Tian, Long San not only showed no fear, but even revealed a playful smile. The next moment, his figure also moved. Frost fell between heaven and earth, and the temperature of the space dropped again. A chill struck, and it was bone-chilling. These two people are so terrifying. Shangguan Yin and the others focused their gazes and hurriedly retreated thousands of meters away to watch the battle from afar. Elder Yi also retreated to one side, keeping his guard up against Shangguan Yin. Tian's sword was sharp and murderous, while Long San's icy aura was bone-chilling. Under such circumstances, it seemed difficult to determine the winner. Battle, God Heavenly Slash. Tian floated in the air like a specter. His voice boomed out, causing the surrounding space to tremble. At this moment, the sharpness of his sword was at its peak. It was as though the air was filled with sharp blades that could slice through anything. Boom! Boundless sword intent condensed together, and a several hundred-meter-long sword image appeared, giving off a majestic aura as it pressed down on Long San. Long San's eyes narrowed slightly when he sensed the sharp sword coming at him. The next moment, the corners of his mouth curled up strangely. He shouted in a cold voice, "This kind of strength is enough to kill an ordinary warrior at the 3rd tier of the divine wheel in an instant. However, it is far from enough to kill me." Ice. A cold killing intent appeared in Long San's eyes as he spat out a single word. Instantly, an ice intent descended and space trembled slightly. Shortly after, it was as if space was being pulled by an invisible force. The ice energy gathered together, and a giant ice dragon appeared in the sky. Roar! The frost dragon roared, and the sound reverberated. The frost in the surroundings intensified, and the space within a few thousand meters turned into an ice cave. Kaboom! In the void, the sword image and the giant dragon collided, and the entire space shook violently. Suddenly, an incomparably ferocious wave of air surged in all directions. The terrifying power contained in the wave seemed to be able to devour everything. Shangguan Yin and the others, as well as Elder Yi, felt the terrifying wave of air. It was cold and somber, and they retreated once again. The next moment, a terrifying scene appeared. Everything that was affected by the wave of air, including the houses and trees, was first frozen. Then, the sword will burst forth, and everything collapsed. The two people in the center of the wave of air retreated at the same time. Tian retreated dozens of meters. A layer of ice crystals was removed from his body. His body shook and shattered directly. Long San was unharmed. However, when he looked at Tian at this moment, there was not a hint of happiness in his eyes. Instead, there was shock and astonishment. The frost dragon just now contained the most terrifying ice energy in his body. However, it It only managed to force Nietian back. It didn't even injure him. Such an outcome made him incomparably disappointed. When Shangguan Yin saw this scene from afar, his heart violently shuddered. The frost dragon just now even made his heart palpitate. He knew that if he was the one to receive this attack from Long San, even if he didn't die, he would definitely be heavily injured. However, Nietian actually wasn't injured. This was too strange. This brat's strength is too terrifying. I must kill him, Shangguan Yin shouted in his heart. Cold, killing intent was released from his body. Do you want to interfere? At this moment, a cold voice resounded, following which, a sharp saber intent shot over. A dazzling saber light whistled through the air, slashing towards Shangguan Yin. Shangguan Yan's eyes narrowed, and he immediately sent out a palm strike. Boom! A loud explosion resounded in the air. Shangguan Yin was forced back several meters. He barely managed to stabilize his body, and he looked extremely miserable. With Elder Yi watching from the side, he definitely wouldn't allow Shangguan Yin and the others to interfere in the battle between Nietian and Long San. Nietian, I have to say that your strength has exceeded my expectations. However, this doesn't change anything. I've said before, dying in my hands is your fate. As the cold voice faded, Long San took a step forward. Instantly, an even more terrifying ice intent appeared. The damaged ice layer on the ground instantly recovered, and it became even thicker. The corner of Nietian's mouth rose into a cold smile. He replied indifferently, I've also said it before. I don't believe in fate. I only believe in myself. How could he hand over his life to the hands of some *T fate? Is that so? The corner of Long San's eyes twitched. As the indifferent voice faded, his hand moved, forming hand seals. When Nietian saw Long San's action, he immediately reacted. The latter was forming hand seals, as if he was about to activate a barrier. When Shangguan Yin saw Long San's action from afar, his heart trembled violently. Even his voice started to tremble. He said in astonishment, Third young master. He's going to use that move. Wei Yangzi and Long Wu also reacted. Their gazes trembled violently, revealing an unconcealable fear. When Elder Yi saw the reaction of the three, he couldn't help but frown. What kind of terrifying move is Long San going to use to make them lose their composure? Long San's strength is already tyrannical. If he uses some powerful martial skill, can Nietian still fight against him? Elder Yi thought in his heart. He immediately tensed up and prepared to make a move at any time. No matter what, he wouldn't let anything happen to Nietian. First step ice seal open. At this moment, Long San's hand seals were completed. The corner of his mouth curled up strangely. Instantly, an extremely cold ice intent was released. The surrounding space was frozen in the blink of an eye. A bone-chilling cold assaulted, making it hard to breathe. As the terrifying cold intent spread out, an invisible barrier was instantly formed. Chapter 610. The ice seal barrier instantly froze the heavens and earth. Long San's strength was indeed terrifying. Elder Yi felt the terrifying aura of the ice seal barrier, and his expression changed. He used his divine sense to sense it, and his heart trembled violently. He couldn't break this barrier. When Shangguan Yin saw this scene, the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer, and he brazenly shouted, Humph! Even if Nietian has extraordinary abilities, he's still doomed to die after falling into the third young master's ice seal. If Nietian fell further into the ice seal barrier, his strength would be completely suppressed. There would only be one ending for him, death. Long San, the first person on the Azura Yellow leaderboard, was at the peak of the younger generation in the black market. Even many seniors were no match for him. If he couldn't even kill a true energy realm warrior today, wouldn't he, the first person on the Azura Yellow leaderboard, be blind? Nietian, how is it? My ice seal barrier doesn't feel good, does it? Long San raised his eyebrows slightly, and his expression was full of mockery. Nietian was the most terrifying enemy he had ever met. If he didn't make fun of such an opponent, it would be too boring. Nietian furrowed his eyebrows. Even though he had opened up the space of his divine wheel, the surrounding ice will continue to invade his body. The ice will in his limbs and meridians became more and more intense. It was as though his entire body was about to be frozen. If this continued and his 9 yuan meridians were frozen, Nietian would really be helpless. All right. Suddenly, Nietian let out a deep roar and released a terrifying aura. The ice that had invaded his body was forced out by him. Since you want to fight, I will fight with you. Puff! The ice was forced out by Nietian. His body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Humph! Seeing Nietian spit out blood, Long San smiled disdainfully and said, "With your current state, how can you fight with me?" Tui! Nietian spat out a mouthful of blood, which directly turned into ice shards in the air. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, his gaze locked onto Long San, a strange smile appearing in his eyes. This smile caused Long San to tremble inexplicably. He was overwhelmed with shock. Could it be that this fellow still has a trump card? Of course, Nietian had more than one trump card. Isn't it just an ice barrier? Is there a need for you to be so arrogant? I'll let you see what a real barrier is. Nietian smiled coldly and released the sword intent from his body. Surging sword chi shot out like sharp blades, and the surrounding frozen space immediately cracked inch by inch. Crack, crack, crack. Cracking sounds could be heard in the air, and the ice-sealing magic field that enveloped Nietian's body gradually broke. Seeing this scene, Long San's heart trembled. Unconcealable fear appeared in his eyes. The chill in his body increased again, and he wanted to stop Nietian. Unfortunately, the ice-sealing magic field continued to crack. The sword intent in Nietian's body seemed to have suddenly become stronger, and it was very strange. What's going on? Shang Wanyan's eyes trembled, and he was quite shocked. Sword warp. Elder Yi, who was at the side, suddenly realized that the reason why Nietian's sword intent suddenly became stronger was that his sword principal realm had improved. That's right. At the moment when the meridians in Nietian's body were frozen, his sword intent broke through the limit, and his sword principal cultivation advanced from the sword intent realm to the sword power realm. Originally, Nietian was going to use the 3 seals of the God of War, but now that his swordsmanship cultivation had improved and reached the realm of sword momentum, it meant that his sword intent had derived the sword warp and weft. This was a unique space that was comparable to the divine wheel realm. After deriving sword warp, Nietian could use sword warp to open one of the 3 great barriers of the AO sword technique, the barren forbidden realm. Nietian's sword warp was only at the initial stage, and the barren forbidden realm he opened would definitely be very weak. However, it was enough to deal with a small ice-sealing magic field. As Nietian moved forward step by step, the ice-sealing magic field slowly collapsed, and a layer of faint void space lingered around him. This void space was slowly expanding, and although it was slow, it was very stable and unstoppable. Kill! Long San felt that the ice-sealing magic field was gradually collapsing, so he didn't wait any longer. The chill in his body constantly gathered, and the space around him rapidly solidified. Even the air stopped circulating. Why? Are you getting impatient? Nietian's eyes flickered with a sharp light, and he chuckled. His eyes were filled with extreme contempt. Brat, you asked for it. Long San felt the strong sarcasm and suddenly became furious. His whole body was like an iceberg, and he roared, 9 dragon ice eyes, kill. As the angry voice fell, the ice on the ground suddenly moved, and the powerful ice force formed 9 vortexes, flying into the air and surrounding Nietian. Nietian's eyes narrowed, and he felt that the cold air in the 9 vortexes was extremely strong, and it was constantly absorbing the cold air in the space. It seems that this is Long San's desperate move, he said in his heart. But his eyes were calm as usual, but there was a cold, killing intent in his eyes. The next moment, an amazing scene appeared. In the 9 cold vortexes, the cold air gushed out, and the heads of the ice dragons emerged, as if they were drilling out of the eye of the ice, and each of them was hundreds of meters long. In the blink of an eye, The bodies of the 9 ice dragons were completely formed. Their bodies were made of ice crystals, and their big bellies were crystal clear. Under the illumination of the sun, they were extremely dazzling, as if they were wearing colorful clothes. However, these dazzling ice dragons contained the most terrifying killing intent. Bang! And at this moment, the cold air in the ice seal boundary fell to the lowest point, and then a hollow sound resounded in the air, and the ice seal boundary was broken. Die! Long Sand sneered and let out a roar. The 9 ice dragons became berserk, and their huge bodies swooped down. The surging ice energy covered the sky and covered the earth. They wanted to kill Nyetian directly. Desolate forbidden boundary, 8 desolate broken flame. Feeling the terrifying ice intent descending on his body, Nyetian's eyes were so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. He raised his hand, and a tyrannical voice resounded. Instantly, all the sword intent in the desolate forbidden boundary condensed on the heaven/sword. On the sword edge, sword intent surged, and sword light flourished. Slash! Waves of sword intent gushed out. And as soon as Nyetian's voice rang out, countless sword light soared into the sky, and the resplendent sword light filled the air, turning into sword shadows that filled the sky and bombarded the 9 ice dragons. Slash! 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 His voice reverberated in the air. In the void, a series of resplendent sword shadows bloomed in the air. Endless brilliance shrouded over like raging waves. The 9 ice dragons were directly drowned by the endless sword light. Roar! In the space, the roars of the dragons rose and fell, resounding through the sky, but it carried a strong, mournful intent. The sword intent and the cold air were fiercely fighting, but only dazzling sword light filled the air. Chapter 6:11. In the air, the huge ice dragon roared. Rays of sword light pierced into the ice dragon's body like a surging tide. The dragon's scales, formed from ice crystals, fell to the ground, and upon landing, they turned into ice shards. Seeing this scene, Long Sand's pupils suddenly shrank. His heart trembled violently, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Shangguan Yin and the others were so frightened that their mouths were agape, but they couldn't make a single sound. Bang! 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 A moment later, a violent explosion resounded in the air. The ice dragon couldn't withstand the violent sword intent in its body and directly exploded in the air. Immediately, the sky was filled with huge chunks of ice. But before these chunks of ice could land on the ground, they were swept away by the impact of the sword intent and directly turned into mist. After the most violent collision, what followed was the most oppressive silence. The world was clear, as if nothing had happened. But at this moment, Long Sand's body trembled violently, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Clearly, he had suffered serious injuries. His body trembled, and his face was so gloomy that it looked like it was dripping water. Standing in place, he suddenly raised his head, and his eyes glared at Nyetian not far away. In his eyes, surprise, fear, resentment, and shame converged into an indescribably complex divine light. If looks could kill, Nyetian would have already been sliced into pieces 100 times. Long Sen couldn't believe it. He couldn't accept it. He had actually been defeated. He had been defeated by a true energy boundary cultivator that he normally wouldn't even look at. This kind of blow wasn't just physical. More importantly, it was psychological. It was simply destructive. At this moment, Nyetian stood firmly in place. His face was a little pale, but his aura was calm. Standing there, he was like a sharp sword. Long San, you've lost. Nyetian's eyes locked on a Long San, and his indifferent voice sounded. When this voice fell in Long San's ears, it was like a sharp sword piercing his heart. It caused his body to sway, and he actually almost fell. Lost. Hearing Nyetian's voice, Shangguan Yin and the others only reacted at this moment. They looked at the 2 figures in the distance in a daze, and the shock in their hearts was written on their faces. Defeated, I've lost, Long San repeated. He was completely unable to accept this fact. However, Nyetian did not intend to give him time to accept it. He took a step forward, and his eyes flickered as he said coldly, "You have lost, and the price of losing is death." Hearing the word die, Long San's expression violently shook. He recovered some of his spirit, but at the same time he became even more terrified, revealing an unconcealable despair. You want to kill me?" When Long San saw Nye Tian striding over, his face was as pale as paper. His tongue began to spin as he directly threatened, "I'm from the Long family. If you kill me, you're dead. The Long family will definitely not let you off." "What? Only you can kill me, but I can't kill you." Nye Tian smiled as he walked over. "If you want to use the Long family to threaten us, why don't you use the Heaven Burial Association?" Right. The Long family is the Heaven Burial Association. You can't kill me. The Heaven Burial Association is very terrifying. You can't afford to offend them." Long San's voice trembled, and his tone was somewhat disordered. Finally, he admitted that the Long family in the black market was the Heaven Burial Association. This was the same as Nye Tian's prediction. Childish. However, this did not stop Nye Tian's steps. He walked over step by step with a cold smile on his face. "Even if I don't kill you, the Long family and the Heaven Burial Association will definitely not let me off. Don't you believe in fate? I'll tell you now, Long Sky dying in my hands is his fate, and you dying in my hands is also your fate." Actually, Long Sky was not killed by Nye Tian, but by Wei Yangzi. At that time, Wei Yangzi was afraid of Di Shi, so he personally killed Long Sky. However, he would definitely not admit it, so he pushed this matter to Nye Tian. Nye Tian was too lazy to explain anything. Even if he explained, the Heaven Burial Association would not listen, so he simply admitted it. "I don't believe it." Long San's eyes suddenly trembled, and he actually roared angrily. Then he struck out with his palm, and an icy palm energy rushed over. This was his final attack, but in Nye Tian's eyes, it was just child's play. Nye Tian's body trembled, and he directly shattered the icy palm energy. Then, he took a step forward, and his figure appeared in front of Long San. Without hesitation, he struck out with his palm. "Stop, don't kill him." Just at this moment, a panicked voice rang out in the air, following which a powerful wave of chi pressed down like a mountain. However, it was too late. Ignoring the voice, Nye Tian directly struck out with his palm. Bang! With a crisp sound, Long San's brain exploded, and the last ray of light in his eyes completely disappeared. The top figure of the Ling City's black market, the first on the Azura yellow ranking, the madman from the Long family, was dead. At the moment when Long San died, Nye Tian suddenly felt a familiar aura. He stretched out his hand, and a formless force swept over Long San's body. A clear ice crystal appeared in Nye Tian's hand. Obtaining the ice crystal, Nye Tian was wild with joy. Without even looking at it, he quickly put it away. At the same time, the powerful force pierced through the air. Sensing that something was wrong, Nye Tian exploded the power of the stars in his body, instantly forming an astral shield. At the same time, his body lit up with a layer of golden light. It was the dragon scale energy. At the same time, he activated the extreme with blue sky armor, and all the sword will in his body also surged out, forming a sword will shield. Bang! With a muffled sound, Nye Tian's figure was directly sent flying, leaving a dazzling trail of blood on the ground. One palm, just one palm, directly broke Nye Tian's divine will space. The astral shield, the dragon scale energy, the extreme wood blue sky armor, and the sword will shield. Moreover, it seriously injured Nye Tian. Seeing Nye Tian fall to the ground, Elder Yi shouted angrily. His figure moved, and he came to Nye Tian's side. Nye Tian struggled to get up. He felt a tightness in his chest, and immediately spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood. At this moment, a figure appeared in the void and landed next to Long San's corpse. It was a black-robed elder. With a sorrowful expression, he wailed, "Long San, great elder." When Shangguan Yin and the others saw the elder clearly, they all exclaimed at the same time. Their faces were as pale as paper. Long San was dead, and the person who informed Long San was Shangguan Yin. Shangguan Yin would definitely be punished for this, and it would definitely be the most severe punishment. Wei Yangzi and Long Wu would also not be able to escape punishment. Long Qianqiu. Nie Tian's expression softened a little. He looked at the black-robed elder and called out his name. Long Qianqiu had appeared once before. Nie Tian remembered his aura and his name. He used his spiritual sense to sense Long Qianqiu's strength. It was actually an 8th-tier divine wheel. No wonder the force of his palm strike was so ferocious. If Nie Tian did not have so many defensive measures, he would already be a corpse by now. Shangguan Yin and the others addressed Long Qianqiu as Great Elder. It seemed that this person's status in the Long Clan and the Heaven Burial Association was extremely high. When Long Qianqiu heard Nie Tian's name, his eyes flashed coldly. A powerful aura enveloped over, and he was slightly surprised. Nie Tian actually did not die after taking a palm strike from him. Chapter 6:12. Long Qianqiu's gaze was cold as he locked onto Nie Tian. His aura enveloped Nie Tian as a mighty force came crashing down from the void. Nie Tian was already heavily injured after receiving Long Qianqiu's palm strike head-on. In addition, the medicinal effect of the 6th-grade Yuan burst pill had already worn off. It was impossible for him to withstand such a terrifying aura. "Don't hurt him." Elder Yi took a step forward. His figure was like a saber as he released a wild saber intent. A resplendent saber light blossomed, and the void violently fluctuated. The mountain-like aura suddenly stopped. Elder Yi forcefully blocked Long Qianqiu's aura. At the same time, his figure was restricted and he couldn't move. Nie Tian's brows furrowed slightly as he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Long Qianqiu had left with Lu Qian earlier, but now he had returned. Could Lu Qian have been killed by him? Lu Qian was someone from the Azura auction house. Even if Long Qianqiu was stronger than him, he wouldn't dare to kill him. And when Long Qianqiu saw his aura being blocked by Elder Yi, his gaze trembled slightly, but he still stared at Nie Tian and said word by word, 10,000-year ice soul. 10,000-year ice soul. What Long Qianqiu wanted was the 10,000-year ice soul. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw that Elder Yi was struggling. He flipped his palm, and a clear ice crystal the size of an egg floated on his palm. The ice crystal sparkled like a gem. With just a slight movement, frost appeared in the surrounding space, freezing it slightly. This clear ice crystal was what Nie Tian had just obtained from Long San's body. It was the 10,000-year ice soul. When Nie Tian obtained the 10,000-year ice soul, he was ecstatic because it was an existence equivalent to a 9th-grade spiritual material. The energy contained within it was boundless and immeasurable. He finally understood why Long San could erupt with such a terrifying ice energy. It was because of this tiny 10,000-year ice soul. The ice soul was condensed from the purest ice intent and could continuously absorb the cold energy from the outside world. It had boundless potential and was extremely terrifying. The reason why Long San was able to rank first on the Azura Yellow list was because of this 10,000-year-old ice soul. Nie Tian could sense that the ice soul still had the aura of Long San's divine sense. This meant that this ice soul had already completely fused with his origin spirit. Nie Tian estimated that not long after Long San was born, a powerful martial artist had forcefully erased his origin spirit mark and then fused the 10,000-year ice soul into his body, replacing the origin spirit mark. In the future, when Long San awakened his origin spirit, he would be a 10,000-year ice soul. A 10,000-year ice soul primordial spirit. Its aptitude was equivalent to a 9th-grade primordial spirit. Not only was this method heaven-defying, it was also cruel. It really wasn't easy for Long San to endure. Nie Tian didn't know where this 10,000-year-old ice soul came from, but since it was already in his hands, it would be hard to make him spit it out. Long Qianqiu, if you dare to take another step forward, I will destroy the 10,000-year-old ice soul. Nie Tian's gaze turned cold, and then a strand of sword intent surged out, transforming into a sharp blade that hovered above the ice soul. Once it descended, the ice soul would definitely be destroyed. "Brat, you dare!" Long Qinshu angrily roared. He stopped moving and withdrew his aura, not daring to act blindly without thinking. The 10,000-year-old ice soul was the Long family's ancestral treasure. It had been passed down from generation to generation, and no one knew how long it had been passed down. As long as a descendant of the Long family had an ice-attributed person, they would try to fuse the 10,000-year-old ice soul into their body, replacing their original origin spirit mark. Of course, this process was very dangerous. If it failed, the 10,000-year-old ice soul would be fine, but the person who fused with it would definitely die. Long San was the only person in the Long family to successfully fuse with the ice soul in the past 100 years. He was regarded as the hope of the Long family's new generation, and was being groomed as the future family head. But who would have thought that this future family head would actually die at the hands of Tian? What was even more unacceptable was that the 10,000-year-old ice soul had also fallen into Tian's hands. Long San was dead, and if the 10,000-year-old ice soul was also destroyed, the Long family would suffer a great loss. This was a price that Long Qinshu couldn't afford. Tian signaled Elder Yi to step back. He took a step forward, and his mind was racing. "You can try whether I dare or not." Wanting to leave with the 10,000-year-old ice soul was obviously a fool's dream. But even if it was impossible, Tian had to give it a try. The corner of Long Qinshu's eyes twitched. He forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and coldly said, "Brat, hand over the 10,000-year-old ice soul, and I won't pursue this matter with Long San. Moreover, I guarantee that you'll leave this place alive. How about it?" "Humph, humph." Tian sneered and coldly said, "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? This is the black market, and your Long family's experts are everywhere. Not to mention that your guarantee is impossible to fulfill. Even if you're willing to let me go, I'm afraid that the others won't agree to it." Long Qinshu's eyes were sharp. One look, and anyone could tell that he was a sinister and cunning person. This kind of person's guarantee was nothing. If Tian was standing in Long Qinshu's position, he wouldn't be able to keep his word with the other party either. "You don't trust one?" Long Qinshu suppressed his anger and roared. The resentment in his eyes almost solidified. "If I'm so gullible, I would have died without a complete corpse." Tian indifferently smiled and ridiculed. "You don't even believe your own words, right?" Long Qinshu's eyes were bloodshot. What he said just now was indeed a stopgap measure. If Tian had handed over the 10,000-year-old ice soul, he would have attacked without hesitation. Recalling the palm strike just now, Long Qinshu was filled with regret. Just now was the best time to kill Tian. If he had directly used his killing move, the latter wouldn't have had any chance of survival. But now, it was too late to say anything. "Brat, what do you want?" Long Qinshu roared like a raging beast. Tian's eyes slightly trembled. He was still thinking of a way out. "Elder Yi, go open the exit of the black market. I'll meet up with you later." Tian transmitted his voice to Elder Yi. At the same time, he sneered and said, "My friend wants to leave first. Is that all right?" Elder Yi solemnly nodded and turned to leave. Long Qinshu's nerves tensed up, but when he saw the 10,000-year-old ice soul in Tian's hand, he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only watch as Elder Yi left. When Elder Yi's figure disappeared, Tian heaved a sigh of relief. Next, he just needed to think of a way to resist Long Qinshu for a while and find an opportunity to escape. However, Long Qinshu was too strong, and Tian's attack was very heavy. It would be very difficult to stop the former. Long Qinshu, just as Tian was racking his brains to no avail, a familiar voice resounded from the void. Following that, 3 figures descended. The person in the lead was none other than Lu Jinghong. Lu Yingying and a pale old man stood behind Lu Jinghong. The old man's breathing was slightly hurried. It was obvious that he was injured. He was Lu Qian, and the injuries on his body were caused by Long Qinshu. After being injured, Lu Qian immediately returned to the Azura auction house, which was why Lu Jinghong and his daughter were here. Chapter 613. When Lu Jinghong saw the face of the corpse on the ground, his eyes were filled with disbelief. The corpse on the ground was actually Long San, the madman of the Long family, the first on the Azura Yellow list. He was actually dead. Lu Qian and Lu Yingying also noticed Long San's corpse. They were equally shocked and dumbfounded. Long San was very strong. Even in the entire black market, he was considered one of the strongest. Lu Jinghong estimated that even blade wielder Elder Yi by Nie Tian's side wouldn't be Long San's match. Then, who killed Long San? Young Master Long San is dead. Lu Jinghong finally reacted after a few seconds. He turned around to look at the furious Long Qianqiu. Mr. Lu, are you spouting nonsense? Long Qianqiu flew into a rage out of humiliation. He didn't care about Lu Jinghong's identity and spoke in a cold tone. How did Long San die? Lu Jinghong asked in shock. How'd he die? Long Qianqiu retorted. His sinister gaze locked on Nie Tian, and he roared. He was the one who killed him. Then, he suddenly looked at Lu Jinghong and coldly rebuked. This kid is a guest of your Azura auction house. Lu Qian even personally came out to protect him. You, Lu Jinghong, can't escape responsibility for this matter. Lu Jinghong's gaze trembled violently. He then smiled stiffly and said, Long Qianqiu, don't spout nonsense. Nie Tian City Lord is only in the 6th stage of true element. How could he have killed young Master Long San? This joke isn't funny at all. If Nie Tian really killed Long San, then the Azura auction house would indeed be implicated. Lu Qian personally came out to protect Nie Tian. This further proved that Nie Tian had an extraordinary relationship with the Azura auction house. If the Long family went crazy because of Long San's death, it was possible that they would directly declare war on the Azura auction house. Nonsense. Long Qianqiu's gaze was ice cold. A vicious voice came from his throat. I personally saw him smash Long San's head. Is this also nonsense? Lu Jinghong, if you don't believe me, you can ask him yourself. Lu Jinghong's body trembled, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. As if he had just woken up from a dream, he turned to look at Nie Tian and immediately noticed the 10,000-year-old ice soul in the latter's palm. He suddenly thought of something and panicked, and he asked in shock, Nie Tian City Lord, did you really kill Mr. Long San? He could already tell that the ice crystal on Nie Tian's palm was the Long family's ancestral treasure, the 10,000-year ice soul. According to the rumors in the black market, Long San's origin spirit was the 10,000-year ice soul, but now it was in Nie Tian's hands. Without a doubt, he had killed Long San. Nie Tian slightly furrowed his brows and lightly said, He came to me on his own. I was just forced to make a move. His calm reply confirmed a shocking fact. Nie Tian had really killed Long San. Lu Jinghong's eyes were filled with shock. The scene in front of him felt extremely surreal. Previously in the Azura arena, he had sworn that Nie Tian was no match for Lu Mingxian. But now, he had seen Nie Tian kill the Azura Yellow List #1 person. All of this was too shocking. Even with Lu Jinghong's composure, he needed time to accept it. So, Long Qianqiu's eyes were filled with dense, killing intent as he stared at Nie Tian. He roared. He personally admitted to killing Long San. What else do you have to say, Lu Jinghong? Lu Jinghong's expression was stiff for a long time. After a long time, he calmed down and his mind was spinning rapidly. Originally, he had been worried that Nie Tian would die at Long San's hands. Little did he expect that the situation would turn around and Long San would die at Nie Tian's hands. With Long San dead, this matter was completely blown up. The Long family would definitely not take this lying down. Not only would they take revenge on Nie Tian, but they would also take revenge on the Azura auction house. Even if Lu Jinghong wanted to draw a clear line between him and Nie Tian, the Long family wouldn't believe him. If Lu Jinghong didn't have any relationship with Nie Tian, would he still appear here? Lu Jinghong was a smart person. He understood this point and knew that he was already tied to Nie Tian. Long Qianqiu, what do you want now that things have come to this? Thinking of this, Lu Jinghong didn't explain anything and directly asked in a cold tone. It's very simple. Long Qianqiu smiled coldly. Killing intent flashed in his sinister eyes as he said, Let him hand over the 10,000-year-old ice soul and then kneel in front of Long's sand to commit suicide. We'll give half of the Azura auction house to the Long family, and our Long family will no longer pursue this matter. How about it? Don't even think about it. Lu Jinghong roared and flatly refused. He had nothing to do with this matter, yet he had to pay half of the Azura auction house's profits. He naturally couldn't agree. Moreover, it was impossible for Nie Tian to kneel in front of Long's sand to commit suicide. Apart from the first condition, the others were just wishful thinking. Lu Jinghong, you don't agree? Then just wait to suffer the Long family's anger. Long Qianshou's eyes flickered with ruthlessness as he roared. Lu Jinghong's face suddenly darkened, and he said in a cold tone, Long Qianshou, I know you're the Long family's great elder, but this status isn't high enough. If you want to threaten me, ask Long Qianhua to do it himself. Although the Azura auction house isn't the top power in the black market, it's not a place that anyone can bully. If the Long family wants to start a war, I, Lu Jinghong, will accompany you to the end. Lu Jinghong had a nickname in the black market, Azura Lu. He never accepted threats from anyone, not even the Long family. Lu Jinghong was one of the top 5 powerhouses in the black market. Even if the Long family had a deep foundation, they would have to pay a heavy price if they wanted to destroy the Azura auction house. Long Qianshou's face turned red, and he didn't know what to say. He didn't expect Lu Jinghong to be so unyielding. Lord Azura, I haven't seen you for decades, but your unyielding character hasn't changed at all. At this moment, another faint voice sounded in the void. Shortly after, a black-clothed figure descended with an oppressive aura. His entire body was wrapped in a black robe, and even his face was covered in darkness and couldn't be seen clearly. As the figure descended, he floated in the air like a ghost. The space around him was shrouded in a layer of faint black qi, giving off a strange aura. Nie Tian looked at the person and felt that he was like an abyss with a huge, dark mouth that could devour everything at any time. Black Qilin. When Lu Jinghong saw the person, his eyes trembled slightly, and he sneered, I didn't expect you to still be alive. Lord Qilin, Long Qianshou, Shang Wanyan, and the others exclaimed at the same time. They immediately bowed slightly to show their respect. In a Long family, apart from the family head, Long Qianhua, there was another person. He wasn't the family head, but his status was the same as the family head, and that was Lord Qilin. Of course, the 10,000-year-old ice soul in Long Sand's body was personally integrated by Lord Qilin. Lord Qilin turned to Lu Jinghong and didn't show any anger. He smiled faintly and said, Lord Azura, our family head has said that he will give you face. This kid's life will be spared. Thank you. Lu Jinghong frowned slightly and thanked him indifferently. Chapter 614. Lord Qilin's calm voice rang out. His tone was calm, but anyone could tell that there was a strong threat in his words. The Long family could afford to lose Long Sand, but they couldn't afford to lose the ice essence. Everyone turned to Nie Tian, waiting for his response. Ice essence, Nie Tian murmured. The ice essence spun in his palm, and the surrounding space froze. The sword above the ice essence sank a little, as if it was about to destroy the ice essence. What are you doing? This scene made Lord Qilin nervous. For the first time, there was panic in his voice. Although the ice essence contained a terrifying amount of power, it was extremely fragile. The sword intent in the sword was extremely sharp. If he wasn't careful, the ice essence would be destroyed. With a playful smile, a hint of worry flashed across Nie Tian's eyes. Let's see how much you care about the 10,000-year soul ice. The ice essence was very precious, and it was especially important to the Long family. Unfortunately, Nie Tian really didn't want to hand it over. He had other uses for it. Although Yang Zixiao's 100 void qi was temporarily suppressed by the 6 yang extremities, it was only a temporary solution. It was not a long-term solution, and the 10,000-year ice soul just happened to be able to help Yang Zixiao completely control the void qi. As long as an expert suppressed the ice essence and allowed it to fuse with Yang Zixiao's spirit, he would be able to completely control the void qi. More importantly, If the void chi and the ice essence were to fuse together, they would be able to produce even more terrifying power. The ice essence in Yang Zixiao's body was definitely more powerful than Long San's. It was because of this that Nie Tian didn't want to hand over the ice essence. But looking at Lord Qilin's attitude, if Nie Tian didn't hand over the ice essence, he wouldn't hesitate to fall out with Lu Jinghong. What? You don't want to hand over the ice essence? Seeing that Nie Tian was hesitating, the Lord of the Qilin's voice suddenly deepened. His eyes, which were hidden in the black robe, strangely lit up, showing that his patience was running out. The Long family only asked for the 10,000-year ice soul, which was already giving Lu Jinghong a lot of face. He did not expect that Nie Tian would not appreciate his kindness. It seemed like he was unwilling to hand over the 10,000-year-old ice soul. City Lord Nie Tian. Lu Jinghong couldn't help but call out. He was also worried that if Nie Tian really wanted to keep the ice soul for himself, the Long family might really fall out with him. Nie Tian raised his head slightly and took a deep breath. His eyes flashed with a bright light as he said indifferently, Qilin Lord, even if I return the 10,000-year ice soul to the Long family now, it will be very difficult for you to find another person who can completely fuse with the ice soul, right? Lord Qilin was stunned for a moment. Then, he said in a cold tone, that's the Long family's business. You don't have to worry about it. Nie Tian was right. Long San was the only person in the Long family who could completely fuse with the 10,000-year-old ice soul. Even if the Long family got the ice soul back now, they wouldn't be able to find another person to fuse with. Nie Tian's lips curled up, and his expression became much calmer. He then continued, Qilin Lord, I have a suggestion. I'll use something else to exchange for the ice soul. What do you think? No. As soon as Nie Tian finished speaking, Lord Qilin roared in anger. The 10,000-year-old ice soul is the Long family's heirloom. It means a lot to the Long family. Even if you take out other 9th-grade spiritual materials, the Long family will not exchange it. Nie Tian looked at the furious Lord Qilin and smiled. He said unhurriedly, who said I'm going to use a 9th-grade spiritual material to exchange for the ice soul? That's even worse. Lord Qilin's eyes twitched. He suddenly felt like he was being played. He stepped forward and released a murderous aura. Feeling the thick murderous aura, Lu Jinghong's heart trembled and he immediately tensed up. Nie Tian smiled and said calmly, what if I use a heaven-grade martial technique to exchange for the 10,000-year-old ice soul? A heaven-grade martial technique? Lord Qilin and Lu Jinghong were both stunned. Lord Qilin didn't expect Nie Tian to have a heaven-grade martial technique, while Lu Jinghong didn't expect Nie Tian to have a heaven-grade martial technique. He had just taken out a heaven-grade martial technique, and now there was another one. Since when did heaven-grade martial techniques become so common? That's right, Nie Tian said as a scroll appeared in his hand. It really is a heaven-grade martial technique. Everyone immediately felt a pure martial Tao intent flowing out, and their eyes instantly turned fiery. Lord Qilin's entire face was hidden under the black robe. Nie Tian couldn't see his expression, but from the slight tremble of his body, it was clear that he was tempted. What do you think? Nie Tian held the 10,000-year-old ice soul in one hand and the heaven-grade martial technique in the other. His meaning was clear. Lord Qilin could only choose one. The 10,000-year-old ice soul had a special meaning to the Long clan, but it was useless to get it back now. However, a heaven-grade martial technique was different. After getting it back, one could directly cultivate it. Thinking of this, Lord Qilin's eyes flickered strangely, like the eyes of a wolf in the darkness. No, but in the next moment, he spat out a negative answer. Cunning. Nie Tian's heart trembled, and his eyes couldn't help but twitch. Lord Qilin was clearly tempted, but he still didn't agree to the exchange. He could tell that Nie Tian really needed the 10,000-year-old ice soul, so he wanted Nie Tian to pay a higher price. Lu Jinghong also glanced at Lord Qilin and thought to himself, Black Qilin, I haven't seen you for decades, but your craftiness hasn't changed at all. The 10,000-year-old ice soul is not worth more than a heaven-grade martial technique. You can tell that Nye Tian is determined to get it, so you raise the price. The 10,000-year-old ice soul had an extraordinary meaning to the Long clan, but to a truly intelligent person, it was worthless. Only tangible benefits mattered. Everything else was fake. However, this Lord Qilin really dared to go all out. If Nye Tian didn't have anything better on him, then wouldn't he have to fight him openly? Fortunately, Nye Tian didn't disappoint him. He really did have something better than a heaven-grade martial technique on him. Hardening his heart, Nye Tian put away the heaven-grade martial technique. He opened his palm again, and a purple sword appeared. A 7-colored divine light flowed on it, making everyone's heart palpitate. A rank 9 Emperor artifact. The appearance of the purple sword made everyone's expression stiffen, and they exclaimed at the same time. Even though they hadn't seen a rank 9 Emperor artifact before, the divine light on the purple sword was genuine Emperor artifact. There was no mistaking it. The sword that appeared in Nye Tian's hand was one of the rank 9 Emperor artifacts he had obtained in the Bloody Massacre Hall, the Purple Wind Blue Flow sword. The last time he saw Jean de Bayo, the latter had branded all the Emperor artifacts with the 3,000 demonic seals and controlled them to the level of a rank 7 spirit artifact. Nye Tian wanted to inspect them, so he brought them with him. Originally, he was going to give the Purple Wind Blue Flow sword to Nye Yuro, but now he had to exchange it for the 10,000-year-old ice soul. Nye Tian felt his heart ache. Chapter 6:15. When the Violet Wind Blue Flow sword appeared, everyone present was petrified, and the scene fell into a deathly silence. Kid, are you really willing to use a Tier 9 Emperor artifact to exchange for the 10,000-year ice soul? A moment later, Lord Qilin reacted. His strange eyes flickered with all his might, and his voice trembled slightly. A rank 9 Emperor artifact was much more valuable than a rank 9 spiritual material. It was also far more valuable than a heaven rank martial technique. As far as Lord Qilin was concerned, Nye Tian using a Tier 9 Emperor artifact to exchange for the 10,000-year ice soul was no different from an idiot. Change. Nye Tian's eyes darkened as he spat out a word. In fact, the moment he took out the Violet Wind Jade Flow sword, it was already destined that he had to change it. If Nye Tian didn't make the exchange now, Lord Qilin would definitely snatch it from him. The temptation of a stage 9th Arch artifact was enough to make the Long family and Lu Jinghong fall out. All right, how refreshing. Lord Qilin's heart skipped a beat, and he reached out his hand excitedly. The corners of Nye Tian's eyes revealed undisguised contempt, and he didn't hesitate to directly toss the Violet Wind Jade Flow sword over. Haha, it really is a level 9 the Arch artifact. After receiving the sword, Lord Qilin could feel the intense Thorch light and immediately laughed out loud in excitement. Nye Tian shook his head and sneered. You're really inexperienced. Isn't it just a 9th rank Monarch artifact? Why are you so excited? Although he said so, Nye Tian still felt pain in his heart. The voracious wolf snake flame spear had fallen into Mo Zhaojing's hands, and the Violet Wind Blue Flow sword had been given to the Long family. The Tier 9 Emperor artifact in Nye Tian's hands was only left with the Dragon Mark Pill Cauldron. Of course, there was also a Star Soul tablet of unknown grade. However, the greedy wolf snake flame spear and the Purple Wind Jade Flow sword, Nye Tian would very soon get them back. He would leave them with the Mo family and the Long family. Fortunately, Nye Yuro and Jean de Bayo were still very weak, so they had no use for these two Emperor weapons. In Nye Tian's eyes, everything had a limited value. Only people were priceless. It was enough that the 10,000-year ice soul could save Yang Zixiao's life. At this moment, Lord Qilin suddenly sensed that there seemed to be a seal on the 9th tier Monarch artifact. He was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. This is great. There's actually a sealing master who managed to seal the 9th tier Monarch artifact to the level of a 7th tier spiritual artifact. In this way, there's no need to fear the backlash from the Monarch artifact's Emperor Light. Lord Qilin was wild with joy. He directly said that Jean de Bayo was a great sealing master. If the latter heard this, he would probably be excited. Nye Tian glanced at Lord Qilin in disgust, and didn't want to stay any longer. After thinking for a while, he took out a martial arts scroll and threw it to Lu Jinghong, saying, "Mr. Lu, thank you for your help this time." This was a heaven-ranked sword art, the Heavenly Wind Sword Art, which was very suitable for Lu Mingxian. I won't say many thanks. If the Azura Auction House has any matters, you can send someone to Sumi Ling City's Alchemist Association to inform me. I will definitely come. Goodbye. After saying that, Nie Tian didn't wait for Lu Jinghong's response and directly left. Lu Jinghong held the sword art scroll in his hand and was stunned for a long time. After a long time, he finally reacted and muttered in his heart, "Nie Tian, who exactly are you? Why do you have so many heaven-rank scrolls? You even took out the legendary 9th tier Monarch artifact. I'm afraid that even the 4 major clans don't have such extravagance." After Nie Tian left, he quickly arrived at the exit of the black market. Elder Yi had already opened the secret passage and was waiting for him. The two of them immediately left the black market and heaved a sigh of relief after walking out of the secret passage. Nie Tian estimated that the Long clan wouldn't make things difficult for the Azura Auction House for a short period of time after obtaining the Violet Wind Jade Flow Sword. However, it would be hard to say if time dragged on. However, Xiao Chun did not have time to think about other things. Right now, the most important thing was the 5-poison blood infant and Yang Xiao. Furthermore, the Sumera gathering would start in half a month. Nie Tian still had a life-and-death duel with Mou and Yu Tianjin. Hence, the most important thing for him to do during this period was to raise his strength quickly. He wanted to advance to the 9th layer of veritable essence stage or even the Divine Wheel realm before the Sumera martial gathering started. By the time Nie Tian and Elder Yi returned to the Gu residence, it was already late at night. Meng Fanxian and the others were all in the Gu residence's great hall. "Elder Nie, Brother Yi, you finally returned." Meng Fanxian felt extremely excited when he saw Nie Tian and Elder Yi from afar. If the two of them had not returned, Meng Fanxian would have personally gone to the black market. "Old Brother Nie, are you all right?" Gu Yi could not help but feel startled when he saw Nie Tian's pale complexion and bloodstains on him. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "I'm fine. There was a small accident, but it has all been resolved." After saying that, Nie Tian took out 100 purple thorns flowing orchids and placed them on the table, looking extremely shocking. "Elder Nie, you really obtained the purple thorns flowing orchids?" Meng Fanxian was stunned. Not only did Nie Tian obtain the purple thorns flowing orchids, but it was 100 of them. How could he not be shocked? Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, "Chief Meng, have you prepared the other herbs I wanted?" "I have prepared them," Meng Fanxian answered. Then he took out a spatial bag and handed it to Nie Tian. "All right." After checking them, Nie Tian verified that there were no problems with the herbs. Then he turned to look at Gu Yi and handed him an alchemic recipe. He said, "Big Brother Gu, this is the ratio for the 5 herbs. I'll have to trouble you to refine the purple thorns flowing orchids, according to the alchemic recipe." Purple thorns flowing orchids was a name that Nie Tian had casually come up with. The 5 herbs were all 6th order. At this moment, Nie Tian was only a 5th order alchemist. If he tried to refine them by force, not only would it waste time, the chances of failure would also be very high. In front of so many 6th order alchemists and 7th order alchemists, Nie Tian naturally wouldn't be polite. "All right." Gu Yi accepted the herbs. Refining a 6th order spirit liquid was much easier than refining a spirit pill. For him, it was a piece of cake. Nie Tian nodded slightly, and then took out the 6 monster god flowers. "This is..." Meng Fanxian, Gu Yi, Yang Kai, and the others were all stunned when they saw the strange monster god flowers. They were all alchemists, so they could naturally tell that the monster god flowers were 8th order herbs. However, their human-like appearance was really strange. Nie Tian gave a brief introduction of the monster god flowers before handing them to Meng Fanxian and saying, "President Meng, you are the only 7th order alchemist here. I would like to ask you to help me refine 6 7th order spirit pills. Here is the pill recipe." Nie Tian said as he handed over the pill recipe. he had prepared in advance to Meng Fanchen. When True Rain gave the monster god flowers to Nye Tian, the latter had already thought about what kind of spirit pill he wanted to refine and could complete the pill recipe in an instant. The monster god flower was an 8th-order herb, and Nye Tian had added a few 6th-order herbs to refine it into a 7th-order spirit pill, monster god pill. With Nye Tian's current spiritual energy, it was impossible to refine a 7th-order spirit pill, so he could only hand it over to Meng Fanchen. Out of the 6 Fey god flowers, 1 came from True Tactic Rain, and the other 5 came from the Azure Auction House. They were enough to refine 12 Fey god pills, but considering the possibility of failure during the refining process, Nye Tian only asked Meng Fanchen to refine 6. Meng Fanchen looked at the pill recipe and thought for a moment before saying, "My success rate in refining a 7th-order spirit pill is about 70%. If there are no problems with the pill recipe, I can refine 8 monster god pills. I only need 6. Nye Tian's mouth curled into a faint smile. Chapter 616. Elder Nye, did something happen? Yang Kai noticed that something was wrong with Nye Tian's expression and immediately became nervous. Meng Fanchen and the others also noticed that something was wrong, and they all looked at Nye Tian. Nye Tian forced a smile and said, "Old Yang, how is Zhixiao now?" "He's doing very well." When Yang Kai heard Nye Tian suddenly mention Yang Zhixiao, he couldn't help but be inexplicably surprised. He then exclaimed, "Elder Nye, is something wrong with Xiao? Just tell me directly." Nye Tian nodded solemnly and no longer hesitated, saying directly, "Old Yang, I've already told you before that Yang Zhixiao has the 100 Phantoms body, a very rare world spirit body. Although the 6 Yang extremes can temporarily suppress the 100 Phantoms Qi in his body, this is not a long-term solution. As time passes, the suppressive effect of the 6 Yang extremes will become weaker and weaker. In the end, he will not be able to suppress it, and when that time comes, Yang Zhixiao will be in danger." At this point, Nye Tian's expression became dignified again. Yang Zhixiao, being able to live to 14 years old with the 100 Phantoms body, showed that his martial Dao talent was extraordinary. Nye Tian liked his perseverance and character very much, which was why he was willing to pay any price to obtain the 10,000-year ice soul. However, it was not easy to help Yang Zhixiao fuse with the 10,000-year ice soul. The Long family had always had the 10,000-year ice soul, but in the past 100 years, only Long San had been able to fuse with it, which showed how difficult it was. "Elder Nye, how can I completely control the 100 Phantoms Qi?" Yang Kai calmed down at this time and asked solemnly. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly and said, "There's a chance now. Not only can you help Yang Zhixiao completely control the 100 Phantoms Qi, but it can also make his strength improve qualitatively. However, there is a certain risk in this matter, and you will have to pay a high price. For Xiao, I am not afraid of any price. Even if it takes my life, I will not hesitate." Yang Kai was very moved and said excitedly, "Elder Yang, if my guess is correct, Yang Zhixiao isn't your biological grandson, right?" Nye Tian's eyes flashed as he suddenly said. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment before nodding. "Xiao is an orphan I picked up from the roadside. When I met him, he was only a few months old." "Yes." Nye Tian nodded deeply. For a child he had picked up, Kai Yang was willing to give up his life. This kind of action was truly worthy of respect. Yang Zhixiao, being able to become an upright person, was inseparable from Kai Yang's teachings. At this point, Nye Tian did not beat around the bush. He took out the 10,000-year ice soul and said, "This is a 10,000-year ice soul. It is a rare 9th-grade spirit material. If Yang Zhixiao can fuse with the 10,000-year ice soul, it will help him completely control the 100 void Qi. However, Yang Zhixiao's constitution is weak. In order to fuse with the ice soul, a divine wheel realm expert would have to sacrifice their own foundation and bear the power of the ice soul for him. This process was extremely dangerous. If anything went wrong, both of them could lose their lives. Even if it was successful, the divine wheel realm expert's cultivation would be greatly reduced and would never be able to improve again." After saying this, Nietian stretched out his hand and handed the 10,000-year ice soul to Yang Kai. Old Yang, are you willing to take this risk? Yang Kai was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He carefully received the 10,000-year ice soul with both hands and nodded heavily. I am willing. For Yang Zixiao, he was even willing to give up his life. Why would he be afraid of damaging his own foundation? Niet Tian exhaled slightly and said, 3 days later, I will arrange the spirit array for you. You will help Yang Zixiao fuse with the ice soul inside the spirit array. Niet Tian had just taken a 6th order yuan burst pill and was currently very weak. He would need 3 days to recover his strength. In 3 days, Meng Fan, Chen's monster god pill, would be refined. If Yang Kai took a monster god pill, his strength would increase by 2 minor realms. It would also increase his chances of successfully fusing with the ice soul. Elder Nya, your great kindness, Yang Kai will forever remember it in his heart. Yang Kai's expression was somewhat emotional as he spoke. A faint smile appeared at the corners of his mouth as he suddenly said, Elder Yang, there's something I'd like to tell you. Please speak, Elder Nya. As long as this Yang Kai can do it, this Yang Kai will not hesitate. Yang Kai nodded heavily. Niet Tian grinned meaningfully, a little embarrassed, but his expression quickly returned to normal, and he said solemnly, I want to accept Yang Zixiao as my disciple. What does old Yang think? Yang Kai was stunned for a moment before he reacted and laughed. It is Xiao Er's fortune to be able to become Elder Nye's disciple. Of course. Meng Fanshun and Gu Yi were both stunned. They glanced at each other and were slightly speechless. In particular, Gu Yi said in his heart, Niet Tian, this guy, accepting Zhang Yifeng and Duanmu Lu isn't enough. Now he wants to accept another disciple. He's simply a disciple maniac. Elder Nye, I'll call Xiao Er and have him worship you as his master, Yang Kai said excitedly before running off without stopping to rest. Gu Yi was speechless and muttered, Big brother Yang is too impatient. Niet Tian's lips curled up, unable to hide the little smugness in his heart. After accepting a disciple with 100 phantoms body, when he returned to the heaven realm and met Dugu and I again, he would have Yang Zixiao fight him. At that time, the great Dong Chuan sword demon, Dugu and I, would not even be able to defeat Niet Tian's disciple. Just thinking about it made Yang Kai excited. Soon, Yang Zixiao's figure appeared, followed by Yang Kai and Meng Xueqing. Xueqing, why are you here? Meng Fanshun saw Meng Xueqing appear and asked with a black face. Meng Xueqing giggled and said, I was playing with little brother Zixiao just now. Grandpa Yang said he had something to do, so I followed. Meng Fan Chen's mouth trembled slightly, wanting to say something, but swallowed it back down. Xueqing girl, it's the middle of the night, yet you're still sticking with Yang Zixiao. I'm afraid you have ulterior motives. Gu Yi grinned meaningfully. Cough, cough. Meng Fanshun and Yang Kai both coughed dryly at the same time, looking slightly embarrassed. Yang Zixiao's face turned red, and she lowered her head without saying anything. On the other hand, Meng Xueqing raised her snow-white neck like a proud little princess and said loudly without the slightest shyness, Little brother Zixiao is 1,000 times, 10,000 times better than that Tang 13. I like to be with him, can't I? Everyone was speechless. This girl was really a tough girl. Next, Yang Zixiao respectfully completed the apprenticeship ceremony and officially became Niet Tian's 12th legacy disciple. Yang Kai watched from the side and was grinning from ear to ear. If he knew that Niet Tian had a legacy disciple named Tang Hao, he would probably go crazy with joy. After accepting a legacy disciple, Niet Tian did not stay any longer and said goodbye to everyone and returned to his room. Sitting cross-legged, Niet Tian began to inspect his Yuan meridian to check the condition of his injuries. He had taken a 6th order Yuan burst pill and suffered a palm strike from the Qilin master, so his body was not lightly injured. Chapter 617. In the room, Niet Tian stood up and looked at his 9 energy meridians. His expression gradually became complicated. Not only did his 9 energy meridians change in aura, even their forms had changed. One could vaguely make out the shape of a dragon. This was too strange. A warrior's energy meridians were usually much thicker than normal meridians, but they still had the shape of meridians. A dragon-shaped energy meridian was unheard of. Could it be that the 9-star dragon vein body has changed? Nietian had a guess. He gradually recalled the day when he merged with the 9-star dragon vein in the rising dragon-killing array. He clearly remembered that his body had been torn to shreds and then reformed. This process was called dragon vein body tempering. After that, Nietian felt some changes in his body, but he did not know what the changes were. At this moment, he finally understood that the dragon vein body tempering not only changed his body, but also his 9 energy meridians. Now the 9 energy meridians are just the initial form of a dragon. When they completely transform into dragon meridians, I will have the body of a real divine dragon. Maybe I can even transform into a divine dragon. And yet Tian muttered to himself. He could not help but smile confidently. When he first merged with the 9-star dragon vein, his physique was greatly enhanced. Now that his energy meridians had transformed into a dragon, his physique would definitely be even stronger. Nietian believed that his recovery ability would definitely be stronger after his energy meridians transformed into a dragon. Once again sitting cross-legged, Nietian quickly entered a state of cultivation. 3 days later, Nietian walked out of the room, brimming with energy and sharpness. In 3 days, not only did he recover his body to its peak condition, his strength had also increased to tier 7 true yuan. If he took another monster god elixir, Nietian was confident that his strength would increase to tier 1 divine wheel realm. Brother Nietian, you are finally out. Just as Nietian walked out of the room, a nimble figure appeared. Nieyuro ran over like the wind. Ninth sister. Nietian smiled faintly, but when he saw the big fellow behind Nieyuro, he couldn't help but stare blankly, asking, This is little Guai? In front of Nietian, a giant beast that was 5 to 6 meters long appeared. It was fat and had 2 dark circles around its eyes. It didn't look ferocious at all. Instead, it was indescribably adorable. That's right, he's already a big obedient now. Nieyuro smiled proudly and said, Big obedient, come here. Hearing Nieyuro's words, Big Guai actually did a roll on the ground. Its seemingly clumsy body was actually very agile. It directly lifted Nieyuro up. The little girl somersaulted in the air and landed steadily in Big Guai's furry arms. Seeing this scene, Nietian was speechless. Nieyuro had really trained Big Guai to be obedient. Big Guai walked to Nietian's side and rubbed its huge head against him, appearing very affectionate. This guy hadn't seen Nietian for so long, but it still hadn't forgotten him. Its intelligence was indeed very high. At this time, Big Guai was not even 2 years old. For spirit beasts, it was still in its infancy, but its size was already equivalent to an ordinary third-rank spirit beast. Who knew how huge it would be when it fully matured? Nietian played with Nieyuro for a while, then went to the conference hall. In the hall, Meng Fanshun and the others were all there. President Meng, did you successfully concoct the demon god pellets? Nietian walked over and asked with a smile. Meng Fanshun stood up and laughed heartily. He opened his palm, and a few spirit pellets full of spiritual energy appeared. Nietian counted. There were actually 8 of them. Concocting 8 demon god pellets is already very good. Nietian slightly nodded, very satisfied. However, Meng Fanshun smiled strangely and said to Nietian, Elder Nya, feel out the strength of Elder Yang and Brother Yi. Nietian was stunned for a moment. He immediately used his divine sense to check, and his expression instantly stiffened. He said in surprise, Their strength has increased by 2 levels. Have they already taken the demon god pellets? At this time, Yilinyun's strength was at the 6th level of the divine wheel, and Yang Kai's strength had also reached the 3rd level. Both of them had increased their strength by 2 levels. Apart from the demon god pellets, Nietian didn't think about anything else. Yilinyun laughed and said, Mr. Nya, Old Meng has already concocted the demon god pellets yesterday. Elder Yang and I ate too without telling you. I hope you don't mind. Nye Tian nodded and said with a smile, Elder Yi, what are you talking about? It's just 2 demon god pellets. How can I be so stingy? Besides, I already said before that I only want 6 demon god pellets. The extra ones are all President Meng's. Since he has already given them to you, there's no reason for me to say anything. By saying this, Nye Tian was actually selling himself. Originally, he was the one who paid for the 2 demon god pellets for Elder Yi and Yang Kai. Since Meng Fanshen had already given them to the 2 of them, he naturally wouldn't steal this favor from the other party. In this way, he would have 2 more demon god pellets in his hands. Of course, he was happy. Meng Fanshen handed the demon god pellets to Nye Tian and said, Elder Nye, my strength is already at the 9th level of the divine wheel. Even if I take the demon god pellets, it won't be of any use to me. Elder Gu Yi is too weak and can't use the demon god pellets. So, I'll give all 8 of them to you. Nye Tian was slightly taken aback. He chuckled and said, How can I accept this? However, Meng Fanshen said seriously, treating the 5 poison blood infant and Shao is my duty. Elder Nye has already done me a great favor by solving these 2 problems for me. I only concocted a few spirit pellets. I wouldn't dare to ask for compensation. Meng Fanshen spoke sincerely and solemnly. He insisted that Nye Tian accept all the demon god pellets. In fact, he wasn't wrong. The 5 poison blood infant was concocted by Wu Feng, and he was the latter's senior brother. He was responsible for the 5 poison blood infant. As for Yang Zishao's matter, Yang Kai returned to Sumi's spirit capital this time to ask Meng Fanshen for help. It was just that Nye Tian showed up by accident, so Meng Fanshen didn't get to use his help. Since President Meng says so, I'll accept it. Nye Tian chuckled and took the 8 demon god pellets. Demon god pellets were 7th level spirit pellets. They had great medicinal effects. It was always good to keep them with him. Elder Nye, when will we help Shao? Fused with the 10,000-year ice soul. Yang Kai had waited for Nye Tian for 3 days. He couldn't wait any longer. Wait a moment. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He put away the 7 demon god pellets and kept one in his hand. He raised his head and swallowed it. Everyone was stunned when they saw Nye Tian's action. The demon god pellets' medicinal effects were great. Nye Tian ate it just like that. One had to know that even Elder Yi and Yang Kai had prepared for a long time before they dared to swallow it. Moreover, it took them a whole day to refine the demon god pellets' medicinal effects. Nye Tian was only at the true element 7th layer. His physique was too strong to swallow it just like that. Nye Tian swallowed the demon god pellet. He felt the huge medicinal effects erupt. He immediately sat down cross-legged. His whole body surged with medicinal effects. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He looked slightly pained, but he didn't make a sound. Everyone looked at him blankly. They didn't dare to move. They were afraid that any movement would disturb Nye Tian. 2 hours later, Nye Tian's eyes snapped open, and he let out a long breath. Chapter 618. Nye Tian stood up again. His strength had increased from the true element 7th level to the 1st level of the divine wheel. In just 2 hours, he had refined the monster god pill's medicinal power. Just as he had predicted, the monster god pill had allowed him to reach the 1st level of the divine wheel. Seeing Nye Tian stand up, everyone's tense nerves finally relaxed. There was a strong sense of disbelief in their eyes. Even Yi Linyun and Yang Kai used a day's time to refine the monster god pill, but Nye Tian actually only used 2 hours. This physique was too tough, right? 2 hours was equivalent to 20 hours for Nye Tian, which was equivalent to a day. He had cultivated the 9 extremes war god technique, had a star raw stone in his body, and also had a 9-star dragon vein physique. It was normal for his physique to be stronger than the average person. Brother Nye, are you really okay? Gu Yi walked forward and carefully examined Nye Tian's body with his divine sense. After making sure that the latter was fine, he still asked doubtfully, My strength has increased to the 1st level of the divine wheel stage. Other than that, I'm fine. Nye Tian smiled easily, his expression brimming with confidence. When he had just come out of the chaotic abyss, he was only in the first level of the true element. Now, in less than a month, his strength had reached the first level of the divine will stage, which is a whole great realm. This speed of improvement was absolutely unprecedented. With the strength of the first level of the divine wheel stage, Nietian had awakened 10 billion star power in his body. At this moment, even without the help of Tawny's Eye of the Scar of the Sunset, he could still release the heaven-shrouding totem. As for how much power he could exert, it was hard to say. In addition to awakening more star power, Nietian's 9 Extremes War God technique had also improved along with his strength and advanced to the third level, Water Extreme Yuan Realm. This was another big improvement for him. At least the Water Extreme Yuan Heavenly Battle Armor's defensive power was much stronger than the Wood Extreme Yuan Heavenly Battle Armor's. There was another improvement that was also crucial for Nietian, and that was his mental energy, which had reached the 61st level. 18 years old, 61 levels of spiritual force. Even freakish spiritual force wasn't enough to describe Nietian. Meng Fanshen's eyes widened as he sensed the increase in Nietian's mental power. He couldn't utter a single word for a long time. He felt like his mind was in a mess. At this moment, Meng Fanshen felt extremely fortunate. Inviting Nietian to join the Alchemist Guild was definitely the best decision he had made in his life. Old Yang, let's go. We can help Yang Zixiao fuse with the 10,000-year ice soul. Nietian smiled faintly and turned to leave. Just as Nietian and the others walked out of the lobby, Qiu Shan's figure suddenly rushed over. Mister! Qiu Shan leapt to Nietian's side. His body was stained with blood, and his face was deathly pale. His injuries were actually not light. Qiu Shan, what happened? Seeing this scene, Nietian's face darkened and his eyes burned with anger. Xiao Shan, who injured you? Old man, Yu was even more enraged as he bellowed. Qiu Shan heaved a sigh of relief and said to Nietian, Miss Yu is here. There is a young cultivator with her. He is extremely tyrannical. I did not let him enter the Gu residence, so he injured me. Yu Qianjin. Nietian took a step forward, and a formless killing intent surged out. His figure flashed as he headed for the gates. The others did not know who Yu Tianjin was, so they immediately followed. Outside the Gu residence's gates, a few guards lay scattered on the ground. They were all significantly injured, but they were not dead. A beautiful figure stood there, emanating a cold aura. It was Rui Qinyu. A dark-skinned youth behind her looked at the guards on the ground with disdain. He said in a cold voice, You think you can stop me with just a few of you? You overestimate yourselves. If not for this being the Sumeru spiritual capital, you would be corpses long ago. The guards kept quiet out of fear. They looked at the dark-skinned youth in horror, not daring to speak. Who could have expected that someone would dare to behave atrociously at the red-clad elder's door in the Sumeru spiritual capital? This person was either extremely arrogant or this was his first time in the Sumeru spiritual capital. Provoking the red-clad elder was practically the same as provoking the Alchemist Association. This arrogant youth was none other than Yu Tianjin. Previously, at the Four Corners restaurant, Nietian had helped Rui Qinyu shake off Yu Tianjin's pestering. However, not long later, Yu Tianjin actually found Rui Qinyu again and pestered her, refusing to let go. Helpless, Rui Qinyu came to the Gu residence, wanting to use this opportunity to shake off Yu Tianjin. However, she had not expected Yu Tianjin to enter the Gu residence as well. When the Gu residence's guards tried to stop him, they ended up severely injured. Even Qiu Shan was injured. Yu Tianjin, I said it before. I'm not interested in you. Please stop pestering me, Rui Qinyu said coldly with an ice gaze. It is not important that you are not interested in me. What is important is that I am interested in you. My patience is already running out. If you still do not obey me, I will force myself on you, Yu Tianjin said shamelessly as he chuckled, his eyes flickering with a perverted light. Yu Tianjin, don't force me. Rui Qinyu's strange eyes flickered, and the surrounding air trembled. A formless eye force encased the space. If Yu Tianjin continued pestering her, Rui Qinyu would have to use her 9 color pupils to force him to leave. 9 color pupils? When Yu Tianjin felt the horrifying eye force, he did not show any panic. Instead, he chuckled and said, "I would like to see how powerful the legendary 9-color pupils are. See your sister." Just at this moment, a furious roar rang out. Then, a figure descended from the sky, and a formless might immediately spread out, pressing down on Yu Tianjin. Feeling the ferocity of the might, Yu Tianjin's eyes trembled. Then he opened the space of the divine wheel, took a step forward, and collided head-on. Boom! In the sky, two formless forces collided with each other, and there was a loud noise. Everyone felt the space tighten, and then it shook violently. Yu Tianjin's figure retreated a few meters, and he actually stood still. Then he fell to the ground, looking extremely embarrassed. "Nie Tian?" He stood up abruptly. When he saw the figure in front of him, his pupils shrank, and his eyes were filled with extreme disbelief. Just now, he was forced to retreat by Nie Tian's aura, which showed that Nie Tian's strength was definitely at the Divine Wheel realm. Just a few days ago, Nie Tian was only at the 6th tier of true origin level. In just a few days, his strength had increased by 5 tiers. Was this possible? Yu Tianjin subconsciously thought that it was impossible, but when he used his divine sense to investigate, his eyes widened, and he was extremely shocked. Nie Tian was really at the 1st tier of the Divine Wheel. "Yu Tianjin, it really is you." Nie Tian's figure landed, and he stood steadily. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and his whole body released a piercing chill. He took a step forward, and suddenly, a huge sword whizzed out. Chapter 619. The sword aura that Nie Tian released was overbearing and sharp. It was as if there was an invisible giant sword in the air that pressed down on Yu Tianjin. Yu Tianjin's pupils constricted as he exclaimed, "What a terrifying sword aura!" The sword aura that was derived from the sword aura enveloped Yu Tianjin, making him feel as if he couldn't breathe. Reverse demonic flow / At this critical moment, Yu Tianjin did not panic. Instead, he calmed down. His body shook slightly, and a black sword appeared in his hand. It exuded an eerie aura. With a roar, he thrust the sword forward. Immediately, the pitch-black long sword emitted traces of demonic and ghostly aura, which condensed into a pitch-black sword shadow in the air and shot out. Bang! The sword aura and the sword shadow clashed. An infinite amount of sword essence surged out, and a terrifying crack appeared on the ground. Nie Tian was in midair, and his sword aura seemed to be pushed back by an invisible force. His body paused, and he was forced to take a few steps back. Yu Tianjin also took a few steps back. He turned around and stood still. He stared at Nie Tian coldly. Other than anger, there was more shock and surprise in his eyes. He never thought that in just a few days, he would see Nie Tian again. It was as if the latter had been reborn. Not only had his strength improved, but his sword principle had also improved. The sword essence that Nie Tian had released was the most terrifying sword essence that Yu Tianjin had ever seen. If it wasn't for the demonic flow sword in his hand, he would have been a corpse. Nie Tian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. Nie Tian steadied himself, and a strange smile appeared on his face. His eyes trembled. He was also very surprised that Yu Tianjin's strength was beyond his expectations. Plus, the black sword in Yu Tianjin's hand was very strange and seemed to have a secret to it. "Yu Tianjin, we meet again. You're really a pile of dog shit, sticking to me and not letting go. It's going to be a little hard to get rid of you." Nie Tian's lips curled into a playful smile, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt. However, Yu Tianjin's expression became dangerous. The anger in his eyes gradually turned into killing intent. He sneered, "Nie Tian, I really misjudged you. I thought you were just a small shrimp. I didn't expect you to grow teeth. I haven't seen you for a few days, and your strength has actually risen to such a terrifying level. The current you is strong enough to fight me." A few days ago, Yu Tianjin was confident that he could kill Nie Tian in one move. Now, however, he had to view Nie Tian as a true opponent. "Is that so?" Nie Tian smiled indifferently, the corners of his mouth raised in disdain. To be honest, Nie Tian really didn't put Yu Tianjin in his eyes right now. He had casually executed that move just now, but had forced Yu Tianjin to use the demonic flow sword. If he fought with his full strength or used a killer move, Yu Tianjin would die for sure. Despite the demonic flow sword's strangeness, Nie Tian was still confident that he could win. You're looking down on me? Yu Tianjin sensed the disdain in Nie Tian's eyes and couldn't help but be enraged. His body trembled, and a powerful sword aura burst forth, making him look like a sharp sword filled with killing intent. Sword warp. Nie Tian felt the sword force forming in the air, and his eyes flickered. Yes. Yu Tianjin smiled proudly and said coldly, "You think you're the only swordsman with sword force? Yu Tianjin, condensed sword chi at the age of 12, sword heart at the age of 15, sword intent at the age of 18, and sword force at the age of 20. Now, I am already at the edge of the sword spirit realm. My talent in the sword Dao is unprecedented. You're just a swordsman with sword force. What makes you think you can fight me?" Yu Tianjin's words were powerful and resonant. In the end, he exuded an arrogant aura and looked down on everyone. Unprecedented talent in the way of the sword. Nie Tian was not shocked at all after hearing Yu Tianjin's words. Instead, he looked down on him even more. This guy was a frog at the bottom of a well. He only formed sword force at 20 years old, and he still had the nerve to say that he was unprecedented. In his previous life, Nie Tian had already reached the sword spirit level at 20 years old. He was just one step away from comprehending the profound meaning of the sword and reaching the peak of the way of the sword. Even so, Nie Tian had never dared to say that his talent in the way of the sword was unprecedented. Yu Tianjin was almost 30 years old and had only just reached the threshold of the sword spirit level. With this kind of trash talent, he actually came to the end of the space. If those sword geniuses in the heaven realm heard this, they would definitely laugh their heads off. Nie Tian shook his head and looked at Yu Tianjin as if he was looking at an idiot. He sneered and said, "I really don't know where you get your confidence from." Yu Tianjin's eyes trembled violently. A vicious hatred flashed in his eyes. He felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. He had spoken of his earth-shattering achievements in one breath, but in Nie Tian's eyes, these words were not shocking at all. Instead, it was like a joke. How could he suppress his anger? Yu Tianjin, your so-called talent in the way of the sword is only comparable to those mediocre people. In my eyes, you are just a piece of trash who has not even entered the door of the way of the sword. Nie Tian Lung smiled coldly. The contempt in his eyes was even more intense. Yu Tianjin was completely ridiculous to brag about his talent in the way of the sword in front of someone at the peak of the way of the sword in the heaven realm. Nie Tian, do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? Yu Tianjin smiled coldly. Suddenly, a sharp killing intent bloomed in his eyes. Although Nie Tian was already a warrior at the first tier of the divine wheel, Yu Tianjin was still confident that he could still kill him. The power contained in the demonic flow sword was enough to kill a warrior at the 6th tier of the divine wheel in an instant. However, now that they were in the Su-Mi spirit capital, Yu Tianjin did not dare to openly kill Nie Tian, especially when the latter was a red-clothed elder. Demonic flow sword. At this moment, the others arrived one after another. When Elder Yi saw the black long sword in Yu Tianjin's hand, he was stunned. Immediately, he shouted angrily, "Who are you? Why do you have a demonic flow sword?" Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Immediately, he thought of the grudge between Elder Yi and Yu Gui. His eyes flickered. Immediately, he transmitted a message to Elder Yi. This person is the son of Yu Gui, the pavilion master of Ling Xintian Pavilion. Don't expose his identity. If Yu Tianjin's identity was exposed, Meng Fanxin and the others would definitely not let him leave alive. And now, Nie Tian did not want to kill Yu Tianjin yet. Since he had accepted Rajan, says Demon God Flower, he naturally had to abide by the agreement between the two of them. Nie Tian would kill Yu Tianjin in front of everyone at the Sumi martial meet. Elder Yi was stunned for a moment, but he did not ask too much. He only nodded solemnly. Although he really wanted to kill Yu Tianjin, he respected Nie Tian's opinion more. Although he did not know why Nie Tian wanted to protect Yu Tianjin, Elder Yi believed that there must be a reason for him to do so. Chapter 620. Sensing that something was amiss, Nie Tian turned around and saw that the attacker was Meng Fanshan. Meng Fanshan was at the peak of the spirit wheel level, and Yu Tianjin was doomed to die. Meng Fanshan cultivated the Origin Heaven technique, and when he released the Origin Heaven power shield, even Mo Zhaojing was afraid. Yu Tianjin was only at the second tier of the spirit wheel level, so how could he block the fierce Origin Heaven power shield? Yu Tianjin's fear suddenly increased as the majestic power of the Origin Heaven power shield rushed over. His eyes showed that he was in despair. At this critical moment, something strange happened. Young Master, just when the heavenly Yuan astral aura was about to press down on Yu Tianjin, a sharp roar rang out. Shortly after, a black light appeared. Like a shadow, it flashed in the sky and turned into a solid shield that enveloped Yu Tianjin. Kaboom! The Origin Heaven power shield fell, and the sound of an intense collision was followed by a crisp sound. The black shield was shattered, and the power of the Origin Heaven power shield was greatly weakened. Ah! Yu Tianjin screamed, and his body flew backward, leaving a line of blood in the air. But after landing, he stood firmly. Although he was injured, it was not fatal. The black shield saved Yu Tianjin's life. Who is it? Meng Fanshan saw that someone saved Yu Tianjin and roared. An invisible sound wave surged in the air, and the space shook violently. The strength of a peak spirit will expert was so strong. Everyone was surprised that the person behind Yu Tianjin was so good at hiding. There were so many high-level alchemists here, but none of them noticed his existence. Nie Tian also frowned slightly. He suddenly remembered that Xi and Wuji had pointed out that Yu Tianjin had a secret guard protecting him in the Square Direction restaurant the other day. It seemed that the person who had just attacked was that secret guard. This secret guard was so good at hiding, and his strength was so terrifying that he could actually save Yu Tianjin from Meng Fanshan. This alone showed that this person was an expert at the same level as Meng Fanshan. The strength of the Ling Xian Heavenly Pavilion was indeed powerful. A single hidden guard was already so terrifying. Just what kind of expert was the legendary pavilion master, Yu Gui? As soon as Meng Fanshan's voice was heard, there was only silence in the void. There was no response at all. "You cowardly scoundrel! Don't you dare to show yourself!" Meng Fanshan bellowed again. At the same time, he unleashed his golden heavenly origin energy, which spread out like a giant net. Nie Tian's face sank. He appeared beside Meng Fanshan and whispered, "President Meng, he's the son of the Ling Xian Pavilion's pavilion master. We can't kill him yet." Meng Fanshan's expression froze as he turned to look at Nie Tian. After a moment of thought, he withdrew his primary heaven energy. Yu Tianjin's eyes flickered with surprise. It seemed as if Nie Tian had said something to Meng Fanshan for the latter to stop. "Why did Nie Tian save me?" Yu Tianjin was puzzled. At that moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and stared at Yu Tianjin coldly. He said, "Yu Tianjin, we have a battle of life and death. I don't want you to die here. At the summer martial meet, I will fight you to the death. Now scram." The domineering voice fell into Yu Tianjin's ears, causing him to tremble. He raised his head and glanced at Nie Tian, his eyes filled with viciousness and malice. "Young master, go." In the void, the shrill voice sounded again. Then, a gust of black chi appeared and swept Yu Tianjin away. "Nie Tian, we will meet again," Yu Tianjin shouted in the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Nie Tian looked at the disappearing black chi in the distance and murmured, "The experts of the Lingxian Pavilion are indeed powerful." Although he didn't see the person's face, Nie Tian remembered the person's voice and aura. The person's voice was shrill and piercing, like the sound of metal scraping against metal. After Yu Tianjin left, The guard on the ground struggled to stand up, his face filled with shock. Fortunately, Yu Tianjin didn't kill him, otherwise, Meng Fanshan might not have let him go. Rui Qianyu, you came to find me after all. Nie Tian looked at Rui Qianyu and smiled faintly. Many thanks. Rui Qianyu's expression was as cold as ice, and she didn't react much. She wasn't curious about Nie Tian's terrifying strength. She was currently the only person who knew Nie Tian's true identity, so no matter how strong the latter was, she wouldn't be surprised. Everyone returned to the house, and Gu Yi arranged a residence for Rui Qianyu. Nie Tian, Meng Fanshan, and the others came to the small courtyard where Yang Zixiao lived. Grandfather, teacher. When Yang Zixiao saw Yang Kai and Nie Tian, she bowed respectfully. Then, she bowed to Meng Fanshan and the others one by one. Nie Tian, are you here to treat Zixiao's illness? Meng Shuiqing was also present, but she didn't care about etiquette at all and just giggled happily. This little girl was always sticking to Yang Zixiao, so much so that she even dropped the little brother behind Zixiao's younger brother and directly called her Zixiao. Shuiqing, don't be rude. Is Nie Tian something you can call? Meng Fanshan glared at her slightly, but he couldn't hide the love he had for his precious granddaughter. Nie Tian waved his hand and smiled faintly. It's fine, a name is just a form of address. You can call me whatever you want. Nie Tian was a man of principle, but he absolutely didn't follow the rules. There were some rules that had to be followed, but he didn't care about them on the surface. Next, Nie Tian found an empty space and said, let's do it here. Everyone looked at Nie Tian, looking forward to seeing what kind of spirit array Nie Tian was talking about. Nie Tian leaped up and his figure floated 5 or 6 meters in the air, Yuan energy slowly surging out of his body. Yuan energy continuously surged out, and a faint light flickered in the air as the embryonic form of the spirit array gradually condensed. After a while, the spirit array solidified. It was actually condensed from the purest Yuan energy, without the support of any spirit materials. What a strong spirit array aura! It's a 4th-order spirit array. Everyone exclaimed when they felt the spirit array aura circulating in the air. Who would have thought that besides being an alchemist, Nie Tian was also so proficient in spirit arrays? Meng Fanshan didn't dare to imagine how an 18-year-old could be proficient in so many things. At this moment, Nie Tian's position in his heart rose to another level. After the spirit array was set up, Nie Tian's figure landed on the ground. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and smiled faintly. Old man Yang, Zixiao, you too can enter the spirit array. He pointed his finger at the spirit array and confirmed the two's position. The spirit exchange array was indeed a rank 4 spirit array. Its use was very simple, which was to allow 2 people to be in the array. It allowed 2 people to establish a link between their Yuan spirits and achieve the exchange of Yuan spirits. This way, it was equivalent to Yang Kai bearing the cold energy of the 10,000-year ice soul for Yang Zixiao, helping him fuse with the ice soul. The two nodded slightly and slowly stepped into the spirit array. Chapter 6:21. Yang Zixiao swallowed the 10,000-year ice soul, and the moment it entered his body, a burst of cold swept over him. Even though he had a strong will, he still let out a painful groan. Asterisk ka ka ka. Asterisk in the next moment, the terrifying chill of the 10,000-year ice soul was released, and Yang Zixiao's body was instantly frozen. The space around him also solidified, and a layer of white frost appeared in the air, seemingly freezing the entire spirit exchange array. When the 10,000-year ice soul was fused, it would completely stimulate the ice attribute inside it. Therefore, the chill released by the 10,000-year ice soul was even more terrifying than when it was in Long San's hands. Everyone's eyes trembled violently, not knowing what was happening, panic filling their eyes. Nie Tian waved his hand and motioned for everyone to calm down. Just as the terrifying chill was about to freeze the spirit array, the spirit exchange array's spirit array began to circulate, and a series of spirit array runes condensed in the air to form an invisible link between Yang Zixiao and Yang Kai. The frost automatically flowed through the invisible link, and a stream of cold energy flowed from Yang Zixiao to Yang Kai. The latter frowned slightly and revolved his yuan meridian, forcefully swallowing the endless chill. Grandfather! The chill on Yang Zixiao's body disappeared, but when she saw Yang Kai suffering from the cold, she couldn't help calling out. Don't worry about anything else. Focus on fusing with the ice soul. The faster you fuse with it, the less pain old Yang will suffer. Niet Tian's voice sounded, filled with a cold, overbearing tone. Yang Zixiao immediately calmed down, closed his eyes, and began fusing with the 10,000-year ice soul. Everyone's eyes focused on the two people in the spirit array, their expressions extremely tense. Especially Meng Shuiqing. Her delicate hands were clenched tightly in front of her chest, her mouth trembling, but no sound came out. No one knew what she was saying. The process of fusing with the ice soul was very slow, as if time was being stretched out. Niet Tian's divine sense was constantly focused on Yang Zixiao, constantly paying attention to the ice soul fusion, not daring to relax. 2 hours later, Niet Tian felt the ice soul and Yang Zixiao gradually fused together and breathed a sigh of relief. However, right at this moment, Yang Zixiao suddenly cried out in pain, and the pain in his entire body suddenly intensified, causing his originally handsome face to become hideous. In the next moment, a strange gray mass of air gushed out of Yang Zixiao's body and slowly circulated within the spirit exchange formation. Oh no! Seeing this scene, Niet Tian's face darkened, and he cried out involuntarily. Elder Niet Tian, what's going on? Meng Fanshan looked at Niet Tian in a panic. Niet Tian's face turned slightly pale, and he swallowed hard. That gray mass was the void qi in Yang Zixiao's body. Niet Tian clearly perceived that the 10,000-year ice soul and the 100 void qi had produced a fusion. The 10,000-year ice soul stimulated the 100 void qi in Yang Zixiao's body, causing the 100 void qi in her body to skyrocket by hundreds of times. The 100 void qi rushed out of Yang Zixiao's body and dissipated within the spirit exchange formation. But this was not important. The worst thing was that once the 100 void qi invaded Yang Kai's body, his strength would be greatly weakened, and once he was weakened to below the immortal will boundary, he would not be able to bear the chill of the 10,000-year ice soul. He would be frozen on the spot, and there would only be one outcome: death. Once Yang Kai died, no one would be able to bear the chill of the 10,000-year ice soul for Yang Zixiao, and the latter would inevitably die. It's too late. I can only do this. Niet Tian's brain worked extremely fast. Suddenly, he thought of something, and a light flashed across his eyes. He no longer hesitated, leapt into the air, and his yuan qi surged out again. When everyone saw Niet Tian's action, their eyes narrowed, and they immediately understood that he was going to arrange another spirit exchange formation. Niet Tian looked nervous, and he explained the current situation while arranging the spirit exchange formation. Finally, he said, I will now arrange another spirit exchange formation and link it with the previous one. Now, I need someone to bear the pressure of the 10,000-year ice soul and 100 void qi for old Yang. I'll do it. Meng Fanshun and Yi Linyan spoke almost at the same time. Among everyone present, only the two of them were divine wheel realm masters, and only they could bear the chill of the 10,000-year ice soul and the weakening power of the 100 void qi. President Meng, you do it. Niet Tian thought for a moment, and then made a prompt decision. Meng Fanshun had the strength of a 9th-stage divine wheel, and Yi Linyan only had the strength of a 6th-stage divine wheel. At this time, Niet Tian also couldn't determine to what extent the 100 void qi in Yang Zixiao's body had been stimulated, so it was safer to let Meng Fanshun, who was stronger, enter the spirit array. However, this way, Meng Fanshun's strength would be weakened, and he would never be able to make any progress in his life. This was a big gamble. If the 100 void qi in Yang Zixiao's body was completely stimulated, and it reached the level of Dugu Ni, let alone Meng Fanshun, Even a heavenly Emperor Realm Master wouldn't be able to bear it. Another spirit exchange formation was arranged, and Nye Tian's figure landed, and Meng Fan Chen immediately entered the spirit array. Inside the spirit array, another invisible bond slowly condensed, connecting Yang, Kai, and Meng Fan Chen. The 10,000-year Ice Soul and 100 Void Qi were still continuously releasing the ice intent and weakening power from Yang Zixiao's body, passing through Yang Kai, and finally pressing down on Meng Fan Chen. After Meng Fan Chen entered the spirit array, the situation was finally under control. The 10,000-year Ice Soul began to fuse again, and the ice intent and 100 Void Qi gradually weakened. Nye Tian's expression eased slightly. Fortunately, the 100 Void Qi was under control, and the situation wasn't as bad as he had imagined. Inside the spirit array, Yang Zixiao's whole body exuded a white mist, and his whole body was soaked in sweat. Although his expression was still calm, his body was suffering great pain. This boy can still persist in this situation. His mental fortitude is really rare. Nye Tian knew that Yang Zixiao was suffering great pain. If it was anyone else, they might have already fainted, but Yang Zixiao was able to endure it, which undoubtedly showed that his mental fortitude was far superior to ordinary people. A moment later, the white mist around Yang Zixiao's body gradually disappeared, and the ice intent and 100 Void Qi in the spirit array also dissipated. "Oh, I finally made it." Nye Tian let out a long breath of foul air and exclaimed excitedly. Meng Fan Chen and Yang Kai's closed eyes opened slightly, and both of their old faces were covered in ice. The two of them stood up, looked at each other, and smiled comfortably. At this time, Yang Kai's strength had fallen to the true element 9th stage, while Meng Fan Chen's strength had fallen to the 6th stage of the Divine Wheel. This kind of decline in strength meant that the foundation of one's martial Tao had been damaged, and it was irreversible. Only a rare heaven and earth treasure like the heavenly fate spirit ginseng could repair it. When Elder Yi damaged his sword Tao foundation, he had used the heavenly fate spirit ginseng to recover. However, the two of them didn't care at all. If they could help Yang Zixiao fuse with the Ice Soul, it was all worth it. Chapter 622. Seeing Yang Zixiao's breath turn into ice, everyone was taken aback, and their slightly relaxed expressions became tense again. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "He has just fused with the 10,000-year Ice Soul, so his control over the ice attribute is still not very good. He will improve with more practice in the future." Yang Zixiao's body was full of ice attribute qi, but he did not know how to control it, so his breath turned into ice. Everyone took a deep breath and smiled. Doesn't that mean he won't be able to speak for a while? Meng Xueqing pouted, very dissatisfied. "You don't have to speak when you're in love. You can communicate with your eyes." Gu Yi smiled and teased. Not only did Meng Xueqing not blush, but she also thought about it seriously for a moment before nodding heavily. That's true. Everyone else saw this girl's forthright attitude and had black lines appear on their faces. Nye Tian said a few words to Yang Zixiao before leaving with Meng Fan Chen. Everyone came to the main hall and took their seats. "President Meng, many thanks for helping Yang Zixiao this time." Nye Tian looked at Meng Fan Chen and nodded. Meng Fan Chen smiled heartily and said, "What are you saying, Elder Nye? Xiao is Brother Yang's grandson, so he's also my grandson. Doing this for him is nothing." Nye Tian nodded, his expression becoming more serious as he said, "President Meng, if you have anything to ask about you Tianjin, the son of Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion's Pavilion Master, please ask." Meng Fanchen thought for a moment before saying, "Elder Nye, since you don't want me to kill that person, you must have your reasons. If you don't want to say it, I won't ask anymore." Many thanks for President Meng's trust. Nye Tian was slightly surprised, but he didn't explain too much. "Jean Sirois, you must have a reason for wanting him to kill you Tianjin at the Shumi Marshal meeting. But as for what that reason was, Nye Tian didn't know. Faintly, he felt that Ling Xian Heaven Pavilion was plotting something, and this plot might break out at the Shumi Marshal meeting. There was still half a month before the Sumera Marshal meet. Nye Tian was prepared to use the remaining time to cultivate in seclusion, striving to raise his strength by another level before the martial meet began. After leaving the hall, Nietian first went to visit Mo Rushi. In a small courtyard, Mo Tai and Mo Rushi sat opposite each other. After several days of recuperation, Mo Tai's complexion looked much better. Rushi, you and Nietian aren't young anymore. Isn't it time to get married? Mo Tai suddenly said with a faint smile. By now, he had basically figured out Nietian's identity and status. A red-robed elder of the Alchemist Association. Even if the Mo family's clan head were to meet the latter, he wouldn't dare to be too arrogant. How could Mo Tai imagine that the trash family head of the past would actually become a big shot in Sumi's spiritual capital in just 2 years? Sometimes, when he thought about it, it was like a dream. He was just reminding Mo Rushi to hold on to Nietian tightly. Such a young and handsome talent could be snatched away by another woman at any time. Father. Mo Rushi's gaze froze for a moment before she called out coquettishly. Her pretty face was as shy as a flower. Her blush matched with her fiery red hair, making her look indescribably charming. She lowered her head and smiled, saying, Nietian and I are still young. Let's talk about marriage in the future. Marriage is a big event. How can it be discussed in the future? If you're embarrassed, I'll go talk to Nietian. Mo Tai was very anxious. He couldn't wait for Nietian and Mo Rushi to get married right now. Father, you're not allowed to go. Mo Rushi tensed up. The blush on her face had spread to her neck. Rushi, right at this time, a voice rang out at the right time. Nietian walked over with an unconcealable smile on his face and said, I think Lord Mo Tai has said a lot. Marriage is a big event. How can it be discussed in the future? As he said that, Nietian had already walked over. Mo Rushi was as shy as a flower. Her head was slightly lowered and her face was burning hot. She muttered, Did you hear everything just now? I heard it. I didn't miss a single word. Nietian chuckled. He slightly bowed to Mo Tai and said with a serious expression, Lord Mo Tai, I will now formally propose to Mo Rushi. I hope you can accept it. Yes, I agree. Mo Tai stood up and laughed. His excitement was evident on his face. Mo Rushi suddenly raised her head. She seemed to be a little dissatisfied. She pouted and said, Other people's proposals are all formal. How can it be as casual as yours? Nietian smiled. He thought for a moment and said, Since that's the case, I will formally propose to Miss Mo Rushi half a month later. How about it? Mo Rushi knitted her brows and asked, Why half a month later? It's a secret. Nietian smiled slyly. A hint of slyness flashed in his eyes. Mo Rushi's beautiful eyes flickered. She wanted to ask, but she was too embarrassed to do so. Her expression was as complicated as one could imagine. She anxiously stomped her feet and scolded, Damn, Nietian. I just said it casually. Why did you take it so seriously? I'll agree if you ask me one more time. Mo Tai also couldn't hide his disappointment, but he could only sigh. Half a month it is. It'll be over soon anyway. Fortunately, Nietian said half a month, not half a year. Otherwise, Mo Tai would be anxious. Nietian nodded with a smile, but in his heart, he was thinking, Rushi, since you want a sensational proposal, I'll give you the most sensational proposal. Just you wait, I'll definitely give you a big surprise in half a month. I, Nietian, will not let my woman suffer the slightest grievance. Although Nietian was shrewd, he still didn't know much about women. How could he know that Mo Rushi was just casually talking about it? Nietian, you must have something to discuss with Rushi, right? Then I'll avoid it. Mo Tai looked at Nietian and Mo Rushi and said with a smile that was not a smile. Then, he immediately left. Looking at Mo Tai's somewhat comical back, Nietian couldn't help but smile. Idiot, what are you laughing at? Mo Rushi raised her head and snappily scolded. However, Nietian took a step forward and directly pulled her into his embrace. He grinned and said, I'm an idiot, but I can marry a smart wife. Mo Rushi's body was pressed against his solid chest. She felt a warmth and struggled a little, but his arms only tightened. She was like a startled kitten that suddenly raised her head, only to see a pair of scorching hot lips pressing down on her. Then, just as she opened her mouth, her lips were pressed down by the hot lips. She could only hear a startled sound, and then everything around her disappeared. After an unknown period of time, the two pairs of lips finally separated. Rushi blushed and shyly pulled away from Yetion. She suddenly said, "Why did you come looking for me?" "That's what I wanted to do." Yetion was dazed for a second, but then he said shamelessly and seriously, "You naughty." Rushi's delicate body trembled. She was so nervous that she didn't know where to put her hands. Chapter 6:23. Yetion came to Rushi not only to see her, but also to give her the beast god elixir. "What is this?" Rushi looked at the elixir in Yetion's hand and immediately felt a strong spiritual energy rushing towards her. Her little face was full of surprise. Yetion handed over the beast god elixir and said, "This is a 7th rank elixir, beast god elixir. After taking it, your strength should be able to improve by 5 to 6 ranks." The beast god elixir was very powerful. A low-level spirit wheel realm warrior could improve by 2 ranks after taking it, and a low-level true element realm warrior could improve by at least 5 ranks. Rushi was now at true element level 1. After completely refining the beast god elixir, her strength should be able to reach true element level 6 or true element level 7. "I don't want it." Rushi looked at the beast god elixir in Yetion's hand. Although her eyes were full of desire, she said with a serious face, "This is a 7th rank elixir. President Ming must have given it to you. If I eat it, what will you do?" A 7th rank elixir was very rare. Rushi thought that this was a gift from Meng Fanshen to Yetion, and there was only one. She was very satisfied that the latter was willing to give it to her. For so long, Yetion had been sacrificing for her, but she couldn't help Yetion. This made her feel very guilty. How could she accept this elixir at this time? Yetion raised the corner of his mouth and smiled happily. He couldn't help but reach out and hug Rushi in his arms. He said softly, "Silly girl, it's just a 7th rank elixir. I have plenty of them. For you, I am willing to do anything. A mere 7th rank elixir is nothing." "Really?" Rushi raised her little head with a serious face. "Of course." Yetion immediately became serious and solemnly said, Yetion, swear that for Rushi, I am willing to do anything. If I break this oath, the heavens and earth." Before he could finish, a delicate little hand covered his mouth. Rushi said anxiously, "Idiot, who asked you about this?" "I'm asking you, are there really a lot of rank 7 spirit pills?" Yetion was speechless. He sneered and nodded awkwardly. Only then did Rushi carefully receive the monster god pill, then quickly pecked Yetion on the cheek and giggled. "Thank you." Yetion touched his cheek and said regretfully, "It was too fast. I couldn't react in time. Can we do it again?" "Of course." Rushi opened her mouth and held her breath for a long time before finally saying, "No." Yetion shook his head helplessly. He looked up at the sky and lamented, "You're not even married yet, and you're already flirting with your husband. Looks like my future days are going to be miserable." Rushi stood on the spot and smiled. Her happiness could not be expressed in words. Yetion no longer joked around. His expression became much more solemn as he warned, "The medicinal strength of the demon divine pellet is strong. After you consume it, immediately go into closed-door training. You can only come out after 10 days. Rushi nodded obediently. "Then I'm leaving." Yetion didn't stay any longer. He still had to give the demon divine pellets to the others. Rushi sent him out of the courtyard and watched as his figure disappeared. Soon after, Yetion came to the place where Rui Qinyu lived. When he arrived at the courtyard, there was no one. Before Yetion could speak, the door of the room opened. Rui Qinyu walked out. Obviously, she had just finished cultivating. "Yetion," she called out faintly. Her cold eyes glanced at Yetion and didn't speak anymore. Yetion pursed his lips helplessly. He took out a demon divine pellet and said, "This is a 7th grade spirit pellet. Take it." Her eyes locked onto the demon divine pellet. Rui Qinyu's red and blue eyes flashed. She could feel that the spirit power contained in the spirit pellet was extremely abundant. Without any hesitation, she raised her hand and took the demon divine pellet. She said coldly, "Thank you. You're welcome." Nie Tian replied. He thought for a moment and said, "Rui Qinyu, I saw Wei Yangzi. Where is he?" Rui Qinyu's beautiful eyes trembled. A trace of killing intent appeared. Her voice became even colder. "He's in Spirit Capital's black market." Nie Tian saw that although Rui Qinyu was angry, she was very calm. He said, "The force behind him is very strong. It might be even stronger than Ling Xian Tian Pavilion. You're still too weak to take revenge for elderly. I know." Rui Qinyu retracted her aura and replied coldly. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. The hatred in Rui Qinyu's heart was too heavy. If she couldn't take revenge, the knot in her heart would never be untied. However, the enemies she faced were too strong. The Land of Bloody Massacre and Heaven Burial Guild were both stronger than Ling Xian Tian Pavilion. It would be very difficult to take revenge. Fortunately, Rui Qinyu had an older brother, Rui Qinyu. Of all the people that Nie Tian had met in this life, there was only one person that he couldn't see through. That was Rui Qinyu. This person's strength and talent were top-notch. Even when compared to Nie Tian, he wouldn't lose out. More importantly, Nie Tian could feel that Rui Qinyu was very shrewd. Moreover, he had a mysterious connection with Ling Xian Tian Pavilion. Rui Qinyu had personally said that he and Yu Gue were working together. Nie Tian couldn't tell if this was true or false. Rui Qinyu's appearance in the black market made this person even more mysterious. There was also another point. Rui Qinyu wanted Nie Tian to kill Yu Tianjin. Moreover, it had to be done in front of everyone during the summer martial meet. No matter how he thought about it, there must be a hidden motive behind it. However, from Rui Qinyu's actions so far, he couldn't be an enemy. At least, he had saved Rui Qinyu at a crucial moment. He had also helped Nie Tian many times. Rui Qinyu is really a mystery. Nie Tian shook his head and sighed in his heart. Maybe after I kill Yu Tianjin during the summer martial meet, all of this will be solved. After leaving Rui Qinyu, Nie Tian arrived at Qiushan's residence. Yu Tianjin injured Qiushan just now. I wonder how he's doing now. Nie Tian muttered to himself as he quickened his pace. When he arrived outside the small courtyard, a panicked cry rang out. "Little Shan, are you all right?" The voice was wild and anxious. It was Elder Ye's voice. Nie Tian's gaze froze. He felt a strong aura shooting up to the sky. In the sky, a shadow of a dragon appeared. Roar dash! The shadow of the dragon soared up to the sky. Its huge body rolled up and roared. The majestic dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Nie Tian's figure flashed and arrived at the courtyard. The scene that entered his eyes shocked him. Qiushan was sitting on the ground. He stretched out his left arm. It turned into a dragon arm that was a few meters long. The dragon arm released a strong dragon aura. It was still expanding. The dragon scales and dragon claws became more realistic. A majestic aura rose up. It was like a divine dragon was roaring inside Qiushan. "Elder Nye, what happened to little Shan?" Elder Yi saw Nie Tian and asked with a trembling voice. Chapter 624. Qiushan's blade dragon arm swelled up. Draconic chi overflowed and the shadow of a dragon appeared. This was the sign of the activation of the third heavenly dragon seal. Why is the heavenly dragon seal activating now? Nie Tian frowned when he saw Qiushan's pained expression. The activation of the heavenly dragon seal will be violent, but it shouldn't be like this. Is there something wrong? Nie Tian carefully observed Qiushan's condition. The 3 to 4 meter long blade dragon arm was still expanding. Draconic chi overflowed. The space within 10 meters was filled with the densest draconic chi. I can't control the blade dragon arm. Just at this moment, Qiushan's expression suddenly changed. He actually became ferocious. The immense pain was unbearable for him, and he finally roared out. "What's going on?" Nie Tian's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Xioshan was a tough person. Normal pain was nothing to him. Roaring in pain meant that he was enduring unimaginable pain. Boom! Suddenly, Xioshan raised his left arm and clenched his dragon fist. Like a sandbag, he suddenly punched out. Suddenly, the shadow of a dragon appeared, and a clear and intense dragon roar resounded in the air, shaking the heaven and earth. Boom! A huge pit with a radius of 10 meters appeared on the ground. Immediately, a cloud of dust rose up, and the entire courtyard shook. The house shook violently, and it seemed like it was going to collapse. Xiao Shan, Elder Yi screamed. He immediately released a wild blade will from his body, trying to help Xioshan suppress the blade dragon arm. The fierce blade will whizzed out, and the blade light bloomed. However, the moment it touched the blade dragon arm, it was blocked by a strong sword will and bounced back. Seeing this, Tian's eyes trembled. How could the blade dragon arm release sword will? He carefully examined it with his divine sense, and was surprised to find that the sword will released by the blade dragon arm was very familiar. Demonic flow sword will. In the next moment, Tian realized that the sword will released by the blade dragon arm was Tian Jin's demonic flow sword will. At this moment, Tian suddenly understood everything. When Xioshan fought with Tian Jin, he must have used the saber dragon arm. However, the saber dragon arm had been injured by the demonic flow sword, and the demonic flow sword intent had invaded the saber dragon arm, activating the Azure Dragon Seal in the saber dragon arm and causing it to go out of control. Therefore, the third Azure Dragon Seal had been activated in advance. Tian had just been wondering why Xioshan couldn't activate the third Azure Dragon Seal with his strength. But now, everything was clear. It was the demonic flow sword intent that activated the third Azure Dragon Seal. Demonic flow sword will. Elder Yi suffered a backlash from his move. He immediately recognized that the sword intent within the blade dragon arm was the demonic flow sword intent. Realizing this, Elder Yi's expression immediately became flustered, and he exclaimed in astonishment, "Oh no!" The demonic flow sword was incomparably strong. Even his saber could not contend against it. Xioshan was in danger. Elder Yi stepped down. At this moment, Tian took a step forward and said indifferently. Immediately, streams of star power gushed out from his body and flowed into space, slowly pressing down on the saber dragon arm that had gone out of control. Under the suppression of the star power, the saber dragon arm suddenly became violet. The dragon scales on the saber dragon arm rose up, and the dragon claws flashed with a cold light. With a punch, an illusion of an azure dragon surged toward Tian. Tian did not dare to be careless. The absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand. With a slash, the sword radiance bloomed in the air, and an infinite sword will burst out. Boom! Immediately after, there was a loud noise in the air. The illusion of the azure dragon and the sword's shadow collided and shattered at the same time. Tian's body swayed, and he was actually forced to take several steps back. The third Azure Dragon Seal contained the power of 100 dragons. In the face of this purest power, even Tian would find it difficult to contend with it head-on. Tian's strength had reached the first tier of the divine wheel, and his body had awakened the power of 10 billion dragons. With one punch, he could easily burst out the power of 100 dragons. However, at this moment, his star power needed to suppress the demonic flow sword will, so he could not contend with the third Azure Dragon Seal. At this moment, the star power enveloped the saber dragon arm like a raging tide, and traces of power slowly seeped into it. The demonic flow sword was very overbearing. With the support of the saber dragon arm, even Tian's sword found it difficult to force it out. Therefore, Tian used the star power to forcibly engulf the demonic flow sword will. The star power and the soul of heaven devouring were naturally easy to engulf a mere demonic flow sword will. With the influx of a star power, the saber dragon arm gradually regained control and gradually calmed down. Like a sleepy monster, it lay flat on the ground. Soon, the star power completely engulfed the demonic flow sword will, and Tian immediately withdrew the star power. Qiu expression relaxed a lot. The saber dragon arm gradually shrank to the size of a normal arm, but the dragon chi contained in it was several times stronger. Tian used his divine sense to sense it, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He said excitedly, "The third azure dragon seal of the saber dragon arm has been activated." "Yes." Qiu stood up and nodded heavily. His whole body released a wild dragon chi, as if there was an illusion of an azure dragon wrapped around him. This time, Qiu had benefited from a disaster. Yu Qianjin's demonic flow sword had unexpectedly helped him activate the third azure dragon seal. Otherwise, he would at least have to wait until his strength broke through again before he could activate the azure dragon seal. Now, not only had Qiu successfully activated the third azure dragon seal, but his strength had also increased by 2 tiers, reaching the 3rd tier of the primordial spirit. "Qiu, how do you feel now?" Tian's eyes flashed as he stepped forward and asked. Qiu raised his left arm slightly, unable to hide the excitement on his face. He said, "I feel that my left arm is bursting with power, as if my strength has increased by several times." "Of course." Tian smiled faintly. The second azure dragon seal of the saber dragon arm only had the strength of 10 dragons, but the third azure dragon seal had the strength of 100 dragons. Qiu strength had increased by 10 times. "Qiu, let's exchange a punch. Do your best and don't hold back." Tian was very excited. He wanted to see if the legendary saber dragon arm was really as terrifying as it seemed. "Xiao, don't worry. Mr. Nye is now at the 1st tier of the spirit wheel, far stronger than you. I also want to see the power of the saber dragon arm." Elder Yi laughed. He was also very curious. "Okay, be careful, Mr. Nye." Qiu agreed. He slowly raised the saber dragon arm, and his aura began to surge. Suddenly, a shocking dragon chi spread out, and the illusion of a dragon's head and dragon scales appeared in the air. Boom! As the dragon chi continued to gather, a blue dragon pattern formed on Qiu body. The dragon pattern floated in the air, surging, and gradually condensed into a giant blue dragon. Heaven-defying dragon soul. Seeing this, Tian's eyes trembled violently. Long Sky had used this move before. He didn't expect that Qiu had also mastered it. The giant blue dragon shrouded Qiu body. Within the giant dragon's body, the dragon chi was boiling, and the dragon soul was almost solidified. When Long Sky used the heaven-defying dragon soul, the saber dragon arm only had 2 azure dragon seals activated. Now it had 3 azure dragon seals activated. Its aura was completely different from before. Roar! The giant blue dragon roared angrily. The majestic dragon roar resounded throughout the sky. Chapter 625. The cyan dragon tumbled down like a collapsing mountain. It came crashing down, and suddenly the space was about to collapse. What a strong aura! Tian's eyes trembled. He suddenly felt a mighty dragon aura shrouding him from all directions, making him feel suffocated. But the next moment, Tian calmed down. The corner of his mouth raised slightly. The heaven slash of sword drew a perfect arc in the air and stabbed. The surging sword intent suddenly erupted. The space shook for a moment, and a huge sword shadow that was almost solid appeared in the void. "AO sword skill, 8 desolation sword." Tian's voice sounded. The sword shadow whizzed out and soared into the sky. Boom! There was a violent sound, like an explosion. A billowing wave of air rushed out with the momentum of an avalanche. Boom! Walala! The air waves swept out, and the surrounding houses were affected. They collapsed and turned into ruins. The dust on the ground was stirred up tens of meters high, and it took a long time for it to dissipate. Tian and Qiu each retreated tens of meters and stood firmly. Tian nodded slightly. He looked at the collapsed houses around him and smiled bitterly. He said in his heart, "The power of the blade dragon arm is really heaven-defying. Fortunately, I am already a spirit wheel realm warrior and use the advanced sword move of the AO sword skill. Otherwise, I would have lost a layer of skin even if I didn't die from this move." The 8 Desolation Sword was the second move of the advanced 3 moves of the AO sword skill. Fortunately, Tian used in time. Otherwise, he would have been in a difficult situation. Qiushan was only at the true element level 3 at the moment. He had only opened 3 Heavenly Dragon Seals, but he was already able to fight against a Spirit Wheel Realm warrior like Tian. If his strength reached the Heaven Emperor Realm and the 9 Heavenly Dragon Seals were fully opened, it was unknown how powerful he would be. The Blade Dragon Arm was indeed one of the 4 great mysterious arms. It was really terrifying. Damn, what happened here? At this time, Gu Yi and the others heard the movement and immediately rushed over. Gu Yi screamed when he saw the destroyed houses. Tian and Qiushan looked at each other and smiled. Nothing, we're just testing our moves. Test my moves? Gu Yi let out a strange cry and said in a bad mood, "My 2 bosses, you want to go to the martial arts practice field to spar? Pity my house. Fortunately, this is just a test. If this were a life-and-death battle, my Vascu residence would be overturned." Tian shook his head and smiled, expressing his apology. He didn't expect that the Blade Dragon Arm with only 3 Heavenly Dragon Seals would be so terrifying. Following that, Tian left behind a Demon Divine Pill for Qiushan and exhorted the other party a few sentences before leaving together with Gu Yi. Qiushan had obtained the Monster God Elixir, and with the help of the Azure Dragon Seal, he should be able to advance to the 9th level of True Element within half a month. If he was optimistic, he could even reach the Spirit Wheel stage. Brother Nya, the Summer Grand Assembly will begin in half a month. Are you planning to participate in the Shumi Alchemist competition or the Shumi Martial Meet? The 2 walked side by side, and Gu Yi asked curiously. Of course it's the Meru Martial Meet. Tian answered without hesitation. With his current mental energy of rank 61, it would be easy for him to take first place in the alchemist competition. However, Xiao Chun was now a red-clad elder. If he participated in the alchemist competition, it would feel like he was bullying a child. I wonder how strong Yifeng is now. If he is as strong as a giant spirit realm cultivator, I can help him merge and refine the Monster God Elixir. That way, his strength will increase significantly, and his mental energy will increase significantly as well, Tian muttered. The other reason why Xiao Chun did not participate in the alchemist competition was to let Zhang Yifeng participate. If Zhang Yifeng could take first place in the alchemist competition, he would be even more glorious as a teacher. Previously, Tian had only met Zhang Yifeng in a hurry. He did not have the time to know Zhang Yifeng's strength. Old Gu, I'll take my leave first. Thinking of this, Tian wanted to go and see Zhang Yifeng immediately. So, he informed Gu Yi and prepared to leave. Just at this moment, a guard of the Gu residence appeared. When he saw Tian from afar, he shouted, "Elder Nya, someone is looking for you outside the residence." "Someone is looking for me?" Tian was slightly stunned. He did not know who would be looking for him at this time. He asked, "What kind of people are they?" Replying Elder Nya, "They are a few youths about 20 years old. Among them, there is a 15 or 16-year-old swordsman and a very valiant lady. Behind them are," the guard answered respectfully. However, he paused before continuing, "They're also following young Master Ji Tingyu." Ji Tingyu. When Tian and Gu Yi heard this name, they were stunned. Of course, Tian was very familiar with Ji Tingyu. It was because of this person that Tian got to know Meng Xueqing. After that, he heard about the Meru gathering, so he came to the Meru spiritual capital. Like Tang 13, Ji Tingyu was one of the 3 oddities of the Meru spiritual capital. Furthermore, his identity was not simple. He was a grandson of the Spirit Array Master Guild's chief, Ji Wuxiu. From the guard's description, Tian concluded that the people outside were likely Duanmu Lu's group. However, he found it strange that Duanmu Lu was entangled with Ji Tingyu. Ji Tingyu is getting more and more arrogant. To think that he dares to behave atrociously in front of the Gu residents. Did Ji Wuxiu feed him the wrong medicine? Gu Yi frowned. Clearly, he did not have a good impression of Ji Tingyu as he cursed. After a while, Tian and Gu Yi arrived at the entrance of the residence. Is indeed Duanmu. When Tian saw Duanmu from afar, his lips curled up. However, he immediately saw another face following closely behind Duanmu, looking at Duanmu with a longing expression. Tian's face could not help but sink. The person following Duanmu was none other than Ji Tingyu. Teacher. When Duanmu saw Tian appear, he shouted excitedly. Just as he was about to step out, Ji Tingyu, who was beside him, pulled him back. She said with a bitter expression, "Young Master Duanmu, I beg you, give me a chance. I promise you that I will not be jealous of Miss Wuyo." When the Gu Residence's guards saw this scene, they covered their mouths and snickered. Gu Wuyo and Zhang Xiaoyi watched from the side, similarly speechless. Duanmu showed an extremely unsightly expression. He wished that he could kick Ji Tingyu away. Unfortunately, she was far stronger than him. When Tian walked over and heard what Ji Tingyu said, he noticed the fervent expression on her face when she looked at Duanmu. He immediately understood. Ji Tingyu had fallen for Duanmu. Previously, Tian had heard from Meng Xueqing that Ji Tingyu was a prodigy with a fetish for men. Who would have thought that Duanmu's words would actually come true? Teacher, look at him. Duanmu looked at Tian helplessly. He must be cursing in his heart. Chapter 6:26. Teacher, don't make fun of your disciple. Duanmu was in extreme pain, but Tian still made fun of him, making him feel even more wronged. Cough, cough. Tian coughed twice, looked at Ji Tingyu, and said in a low voice, Ji Tingyu, do you still recognize me? Ji Tingyu's heart was completely on Duanmu, and he didn't notice Tian's existence. When the latter spoke, he suddenly raised his head, and when he saw clearly that it was Tian, his face suddenly stiffened, and he screamed, "It's you!" Ji Tingyu didn't pay much attention when he heard Duanmu call him teacher, but now he realized with shock that the teacher of his sweetheart was actually his enemy. How could he not be surprised? That's right, it's me. Tian smiled playfully and said, Ji Tingyu, I didn't think we would meet in this kind of situation. Ji Tingyu's expression shook, and he suddenly thought of something. He actually knelt in front of Tian and said with sincerity, Sir, Ji Tingyu is willing to worship you as teacher, and I only ask that you grant me and Duanmu. Tian was stunned by Ji Tingyu's inexplicable action, and then he smiled and said slowly, First of all, I won't accept you as a disciple, because you aren't qualified at all. Second, Duanmu's matters are his own decisions, and I have no right to interfere. Ji Tingyu's gaze suddenly trembled, and he was slightly angry. He was a genius of Sumi's spirit capital, and at this time, for the sake of his sweetheart, he had to endure humiliation to worship a teacher, but the other actually didn't agree and even said that he wasn't qualified. This was difficult for him to accept. He immediately stood up, and his gaze swept over Duanmu, and he suppressed the anger in his heart. He looked at Tian, and his gaze revealed a hint of evil, and said, You are his teacher, so of course he will listen to your words. As long as you let him be with me, our previous grievances will be written off. How about it? Even now, Ji Tingyu still had no idea what was going on. Her words were laced with a thick threat. Tian glanced at Duanmu. He didn't want to waste any more words with Ji Tingyu. His face darkened as he growled, Scram! Ji Tingyu's gaze froze. She hadn't even gotten angry, but the latter had gotten angry first. What was going on? Brat, this is Sumi's spirit capital. You know my identity, and I'm definitely not someone you can offend. If you know what's good for you. Ji Tingyu thought for a moment, and a cold light shot out from her eyes as she threatened him coldly. You don't know what you're talking about. Tian sneered and took a step forward. Instantly, a fierce sword intent whizzed out. Bang! The sword was so fast that Ji Tingyu didn't have time to react. She was sent flying and smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. You? He crawled up from the ground. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. His body was trembling, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that he was furious to the extreme. Ji Tingyu didn't understand. Half a month ago, Nietion's battle strength was on par with his. How could he not be able to withstand a single sword will now? Nietion's strength rose too quickly. It was unimaginable. I'll say it one more time. Scram. Nietion's gaze turned cold. Killing intent was released from his entire body. It was almost condensed into a substance, causing Ji Tingyu to feel a suffocating pressure. Ji Tingyu felt this killing intent, and the muscles on his face couldn't help but tremble. He could feel that Nietion wasn't joking. If he didn't leave now, the other party would really kill him. Nietion was already very restrained in that move just now. Otherwise, Ji Tingyu would have died 100 times already. Ji Tingyu looked at Duanmu Lu unwillingly and said, "Young Master Duanmu, I won't give up on you. In this life, Ji Tingyu won't marry anyone but you." Finished speaking, ignoring everyone's stunned reaction, Ji Tingyu turned around and left. Her back was filled with loneliness. Nietion was speechless. This guy was still a loyal woman. Gu Yi looked at Ji Tingyu's back. He frowned slightly and said, "It's not good to offend someone from the Ji clan. What does Gu mean?" Nietion saw that Gu Yi seemed to be pointing at something and couldn't help but ask. Gu Yi smiled helplessly and said, "Sumi Ling Capital's 3 great evildoers. Other than Mou and Gu Qiulong, there's another person. Do you know who it is?" Nietion was stunned for a moment. He shook his head and didn't know. Sumi Ling Capital's 3 great evildoers. So far, he had only seen Mou and Gu Qiulong. As for the other person, not only had Nietion never seen him before, he had never even heard of him. This person seemed to be very low-key. The people of Sumi Ling Capital rarely mentioned him. Could it be someone from the Ji clan? Nietion asked. Yes. Gu Yi nodded solemnly and said, "Sumi Ling Capital's 3 great evildoers. Mou is ranked 2nd, Gu Qiulong is ranked 3rd, and the first is the eldest young master of the Ji clan, Ji Tinghai." Ji Tinghai. Hearing this name, Nietion immediately smiled and asked, "This person is Ji Tingyu's big brother?" Ji Tinghai, Ji Tingyu. Hearing the names, they were brothers. Yes. Gu Yi nodded and said, "Ji Tinghai is known as the #1 evildoer of Sumi Ling Capital. The last time he appeared was 3 years ago. At that time, he was only 19 years old and was already at the 1st level of the Divine Wheel. Afterward, for some unknown reason, Ji Tinghai had a life-and-death battle with the commander of the Danwu Hall. The latter was an expert at the 2nd level of the Divine Wheel, but the final result was that Ji Tinghai killed his opponent in one move. After that, the Alchemist Association and the Spirit Formation Association became hostile. After that battle, Ji Tinghai seemed to have restrained his temperament and didn't show his face for 3 years. I reckon that he will come out for the Sumi martial meet this time." Hearing Gu Yi's narration, Nietion's gaze slightly froze, but his eyes emitted a sharp and fierce glow. Ji Tinghai was indeed very powerful. 3 years ago, he was already able to kill a martial artist at the 2nd level of the Divine Wheel in one move. He didn't show his face for 3 years, so he must have been cultivating in seclusion. At this moment, it was unknown what realm his strength had reached. Gu Yi paused for a moment and said, "There is a rumor in Sumi Ling Capital that if Ji Tinghai matures, the Ji clan will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 4 major clans in less than 10 years. Supporting an entire clan with the strength of a single person, Ji Tinghai was indeed powerful." Nietion's face didn't have the slightest trace of fear. Instead, the corner of his mouth slightly curled up, and he said rather playfully, "I can't wait to meet such a person." Gu Yi was stunned for a moment and sighed. "You offended Ji Tingyu. If Ji Tinghai knew, he definitely wouldn't let you off. If you meet this person in the Sumi martial meet, you must be careful. Many thanks for the reminder, old Gu." Nietion smiled faintly as a bright light flickered in his eyes. Gu Yi only said a few words, but Nietion could tell that Ji Tinghai was far more terrifying than Mou and Gu Qiulong. He would probably be a formidable opponent in the Sumi martial meet. Nietion let Duanmu Lu and the others enter the Gu residence and arranged a place for them to stay. Following that, Nie Tian let Zhang Yifeng, Duan Mulu, and Yang Zixiao meet with each other. This could be considered the first meeting between fellow apprentices. Tang Hao, you will also appear in the Sumi martial meet this time, right? Nie Tian said in his heart as he looked at the 3 disciples in front of him. Tang Hao was the only one among the 9 disciples in his previous life who knew of his whereabouts. Unfortunately, the 2 of them had yet to meet each other. Back then, when Nie Tian died, Tang Hao was only a teenager. Now, he was already an old man over 100 years old. On the contrary, Nie Tian had become a teenager. The scene of master and disciple meeting again would definitely be very interesting. Chapter 627. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Sumi Ling capital, Gu residence. In the room, Nie Tian rose to his feet and let out a long breath. His cold eyes suddenly opened, and they shone with a strange light. For the past half a month, Nie Tian had not taken a step out and had been cultivating in seclusion. Previously, his strength had increased too quickly, so he needed to settle down. After half a month of cultivation, not only had Nie Tian's strength stabilized, but it also increased again, reaching the 2nd tier of the divine wheel. Tomorrow was the start of the Sumi martial meet. Nie Tian had ended his seclusion a day earlier to attend the meet on time. Mo Rushi should also end her seclusion. I'll go find her first. With a smile, Nie Tian walked out of the room. Just as Nie Tian stepped out of the room, at the Mo clan's divine phoenix peak, there was a cliff that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It was straight and very steep. At this moment, a figure appeared in the sky. With a flash, he arrived in front of the cliff. This person was none other than the head of the Mo clan, Mo Zhaojing. It's time for you to come out, Mo Zhaojing murmured as he looked at the cliff in front of him. Bang! As his voice fell, a loud sound suddenly came from the cliff, and it exploded. Among the flying rubble, a figure actually appeared. This figure was very familiar. It was the number 1 genius of the Mo clan, Mou. At this moment, Mou showed off his sharpness. His aura was much more tyrannical than before, and his current strength had actually reached the 3rd tier of the divine wheel. A month ago, Mou was only a 1st-tier divine wheel warrior. Now, he was already a 3rd-tier divine wheel warrior. The speed of his strength improvement was very shocking. Mou came out from the cliff. Strangely, the exploded rubble was actually suspended in the air and did not fall. It seemed that there was a magical power within the cliff that ensured that the rubble did not fall. Mo Zhaojing saw Mou come out and sensed his strength. He was very excited. Father, Mou revealed a joyful expression and could not hide his excitement. He said, the Mo clan's ancestral land is indeed a magical place. I only entered the ancestral land to cultivate for a month, and my strength actually increased by 2 tiers. This is too fast. Yes. Mo Zhaojing nodded slightly. He was very satisfied with the improvement of Mou's strength. He said, the spirit pool in the Mo family's ancestral land is a spirit-gathering array from ancient times. It can continuously gather the spiritual power of heaven and earth. The heaven and earth spirit chi in the spirit pool is several hundred times denser than the outside world. In the past, I cultivated in the spirit pool, which is why I have today's achievements. As Mo Zhaojing spoke, he waved his hand and the rocks in the air gathered together, sealing the cave on the cliff. Mo Zhaojing looked deeply at Mou and continued, the Mo family's ancestral land is the biggest secret of the Mo family. Only the Mo family's patriarch knows the existence of the ancestral land. Even the Elders' Council does not know about it. You should understand why I want you to cultivate in the ancestral land. Mou was slightly moved and said, this child knows that father wants this child to be the next head of the family. This child will not let father down. Let's go. Mo Zhaojing nodded slightly and left with Mou. In order to let Mou improve his strength, Mo Zhaojing told him the secret of the Mo family's ancestral land in advance. Mou and Nie Tian had a life and death battle. If the two met in this Sumi martial meet, it would be a battle to the death. Mo Zhaojing had seen Nie Tian's strength before and was quite afraid of him. In addition, Nietian stopped Mo Fong from killing Mo Tai. Mo Fong brought news that Nietian's strength was strange and unpredictable. Even a second-tier spirit wheel expert from the deity transformation sect died in his hands. Mo Zhaojing was worried that Mo Yu was not Nietian's opponent, so he let him enter the ancestral land to cultivate. Now, Mo Yu is already at the third tier of the spirit wheel. In addition, when Mo Rushi triggered the phoenix cry to the ninth heaven, it awakened the phoenix bloodline in Mo Yu's body. Therefore, Mo Zhaojing was very confident in Mo Yu. At the same time, in a secret place of the Su-Mi spirit capital Array Master Guild, outside the room, several figures were waiting anxiously. Among these figures, two of them were very familiar. One was the spirit array master Yao Feek, and the other was the oddball Ji Tingyu. The other person was a white-haired old man with a cold expression and the demeanor of a grandmaster. He was none other than the president of the Spirit Array Master Guild, Ji Wuxiu. At the same time, he was also the number 1 Spirit Array Master in the 3,000 Small Worlds. At this moment, Ji Wuxiu, Yao Feek, and the others were waiting for a person to come out of seclusion. That person was Ji Tinghai. Ji Tinghai was known as the number 1 monster in Su-Mi Spirit Capital. 3 years ago, after he killed the commander of the Danwu Hall in one move and shocked Su-Mi Spirit Capital, he secretly went into seclusion in the Spirit Array Master Guild for 3 years. He went into seclusion for 3 years just to shock the world again in the Su-Mi Martial Meet. Tomorrow was the day the Su-Mi Martial Meet would begin, and today was the day Ji Tinghai came out of seclusion. Grandfather, why hasn't Big Brother come out yet? Ji Tingyu was a little impatient and couldn't help but ask. Don't speak. Ji Wuxiu glared at Ji Tingyu cold and berated her. The news of Ji Tingyu pestering Duanmu Lu at the entrance of the Gu residence and kneeling to Nye Tian had already spread throughout Su-Mi Spirit Capital. When Ji Wuxiu found out about this, he almost went crazy from anger. The Ji clan's face was almost completely lost because of Ji Tingyu. What kind of sin did Ji Wuxiu commit in his previous life to actually have such a strange grandson? Ji Tingyu lowered her head and didn't dare to speak anymore. Yao Feek naturally knew what Ji Wuxiu was thinking. He smiled faintly and said, President Ji, don't worry. When nephew Tinghai comes out of seclusion this time, his strength will at least reach the 5th tier of the Divine Wheel. In addition to the protection of the rank 6 spirit formation that President Ji left on him, he will almost be able to contend against a 7th tier Divine Wheel martial artist. In this year's Su-Mi Martial Meet, nephew Tinghai will definitely shine. The champion of the martial meet will definitely be nephew Tinghai. As for that Nye Tian, he better pray that he doesn't meet nephew Tinghai. If he does, he will definitely be killed in one move. Ever since Yao Feek made a bet with Nye Tian and lost the 5-element spirit formation, he had been brooding over it. He wanted to kill Nye Tian with his own hands. If he could borrow Ji Tinghai's hand to get rid of Nye Tian, it would be pretty good. Yes. Ji Wuxiu nodded, showing his trust in Ji Tinghai. Although Nye Tian had been in the limelight recently, Ji Wuxiu still felt that Nye Tian was far inferior to his monstrous grandson. As long as nothing happened to Ji Tinghai while he was in seclusion, his strength would definitely be above the 5th tier of the Divine Wheel. It would be easy for him to take the champion of the Su-Mi Martial Meet. Boom! At this moment, the secret door of the room shook. The stone door opened slowly, and a figure walked out step by step. Tinghai, Big Brother. Seeing that person walk out, Ji Wuxiu and Ji Tingyu became excited and shouted at the same time. The person who walked out of the room was none other than the number 1 monstrous talent of the Su-Mi spiritual capital, Ji Tinghai.